Hey everyone, before we get to this week's show, this is just your weekly reminder to please continue to pray for my wife, Lindsay. She is battling breast cancer right now, and we're praying for complete healing in Jesus' name. Thank you.
It is a club. It's a club. It's an agency that has legal authority on the earth. Their physical human assets on the earth operate as covert agents do. So they are trained physically to operate as a spy, because what they're doing is physically illegal in the countries they're doing it in. Sometimes they are collecting children that have been named in rituals that are done with different deities, different gods being invoked, who have names that come onto the priest's lips, who they go and collect them and bring them to the coven. This is how children are fed into the Finders Club. There are other times where they send out recruiters, okay? The recruiter's job is to persuade and make an invitation to somebody who has a positional status that's not often high up in worldly terms. That tends to be somebody that is mid-level in their life before they go onto a meteoric rise. They're open and willing. They're willing to make a deal. Lots of people today will post videos of them saying, "I will sign on the line. I'll do it. Problem is they will."
Nathan Reynolds here in studio again. How are you, man?
Absolutely fired up, Tony. How are you?
I'm good, man. Listen, I've had to censor myself with you since you've gotten here, because you and I start talking. I'm like, just save it for the show. Because like one of my pet peeves is I hate rehashing conversations, because then it requires me to be an actor and pretend I never heard this before. So like I don't be like, oh, that's a great point. I never thought about that. So there's some of the things you started talking. I was like, we'll just talk about that on the show. Let me make a note of that. That's my sign of don't talk about now. But I don't, and we don't really have a huge, grand direction we're going to go in today, which is often with my show. Like I usually sit down and just talk to people. But I think what would be good is I'm going to do two things here. One, all right, a few things. One, I want you to kind of just let people know who maybe are just tuning in for the first time, who you are, which a lot of people know who you are. And then I want to jump into where we left off last time you were here and just let it evolve from there. Because just so the audience knows, the second interview you and I did, the mics get turned off. We're done. Hey, that was a great show. And then you're like, yeah, these dragons underground. I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, bro, you buried the lead. So I want to kind of jump into the deep end with that. Let's and just kind of go with that, and we'll see where things go. But I don't know if it's possible, but if you can give like a 30,000 foot view of what, who you are, maybe some things that we covered before, and then we'll kind of jump into things and see where it goes.
Absolutely.
All right.
Let's dive in.
Good luck.
We'll try not to hit on the Beyonce loose thread and the Queen of Bee and all the high priestesses stuff right now.
Okay.
Maybe we'll put a pin in that. Put a pin in that, bro. Put that in the notes. You're going to have to circle back to the mothers of the fallen. It's going to go some pretty, first of all, we're going to have some topics that are extremely dark. We're going to have to talk about the two covenants here, the covenant with death, and we're going to have to talk about a covenant with life, which means we're going to have to expose the covenants with death in a very deep and intimate way. But we're not going to leave people in the pit. We're going to show them the way out, the path of salvation through faith and trust in Jesus Christ of Nazareth, Yeshua, our Messiah. It's the only reason I'm alive, first and foremost, because I changed teams, But I was born into a family that absolutely intrinsically has followed a ancient craft of serpent worship, dragon worship. These are people who take the understanding of the supernatural realm with absolute certainty. They are not deceived as the majority of people into believing that there is not a supernatural realm. They are intrinsically, intimately aware that the world around them is filled to an overflowing abundance with spiritual things. There are people interacting at any given time with those spirits, whether or not they are under an understanding of it. But my family was under a covenant with the dragon. And because of that, they were his ambassadors on the earth, and they would operate under his dominion and his authority, and were given power by him through the selling of their children, through the giving of their blood through covenant. I was the chosen one out of my family for that process. My family on one side looked very Christian, operated in their daytime life as sincere Christians, but were absolutely Luciferian at night. Rosicrucian, deep-seated Luciferians, people that were willing to swear oaths to specific fallen ones, call up their phone numbers and dial in direct to them to get their instructions on what to do. I was bound up in that cult throughout my life. And I was raised in trauma and in bloodshed and in violence to create triggers of dissociation, split personalities, to fracture my mind so that I had sub-personalities that could operate between the two realms. One that was much more of a night walker, that was trained in this occult path work, and a keeper of the X, which is the covenant of Apollo, the beast. And then another one that was seeking diligently a path of life and redemption. But my journey was not strange to me until I got out of it, much more so. I got given what I thought was going to be a path of salvation, which was going in the route of becoming a part of the hunter teams, special kill teams with the United States military. And at the end of that, I saw it was just another corrupt organization that trafficked the souls of men just like my family did. They just did it without much of the ritual magic side of the equation. And it was a process of undoing of my identity as a soldier and as a warrior, and on a path of destruction, suffering, and led me to a place of bleeding to death on the bottom of my parents' basement and seeing my familiar spirit death come to harvest my soul. And a man stood between him and me and said, "He's mine. You can't have him." That was a moment where I saw fear in death's eyes for the first time in my life. And I knew that there was a covenant. There was someone in authority who could command death. And that was the turning point of much of my walk in my commitment to which team I was going to be a part of. So I've been on a journey ever since then of trying to cut ties with the occult, trying to cut ties with my family and raise my new family, my children, my wife and I in a different kingdom, and exposing the works of darkness, confessing my sins before men that I might have salvation and healing. And I believe that's the most effective tool we have is forgiveness and repentance. And without those two weapons, we are bound in the same fallen state as these wicked watchers that fell.
Yeah. So with the life that you lived, upbringing, your deliverance process, was that something that, you had people guide you through, or was that something you worked through yourself? Because I know there's people who practice deliverance ministries, and there's people who have done deliverance themselves, like on themselves. What'd that look like for you?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I sought deliverance out from home. Because
from your parents?
No, sorry. From my home where I lived with my wife.
Gotcha.
After when my wife conceived my child, that was a turning point of what are we going to do? Because this is a freak mutation in my family. This is an abreaction. A child that should not be,
Your child.
A miracle. Yes.
Okay.
To be real clear, when I was young, the Knights of Columbus in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, deal with human trafficking out of Our Lady of the Lake Catholic Church that's down there. That's where the headquarters of this was. That's because their goddess that they worship, the Lady of the Lake, had children, according to their ideologies and their belief, is a goddess called Echidna. And she had children with Hercules, son of Zeus, which is Satan, the dragon. That started the Scythian line, of which I'm a descendant of. Those were the god kings that ruled much of Eurasia, Europe, and then invaded here into the Americas and set up their own establishment for these serpent cults. She's the goddess mother, the mother of dragons. That temple where they worship her is where we'd bring back cut off heads, mutilated hands, and make offerings to her. Those priests that were there will castrate boys, not cut their testicles off. They take jeweler's pliers and grab the scrotum and crush their epididymis. That's the umbilical cords kind of things that come out of your testes.
Jeez.
They did that when I was a boy so that I would be damaged goods and not able to turn pubescent before they could get their money's worth out of me, because they want boys to stay boys as long as possible.
Sounds like some Peter Pan crap.
It's atrocious, but it's a way to mark someone like a eunuch. So I had horrific testicular pain and major issues throughout my life that left me crippled. Some of the worst chronic pain I've ever dealt with in my life. And I had a hope that it would get a lot better when I got married. It got a lot worse. And my wife was a nurse at the time, and she had a better understanding of what was going on. It was initially diagnosed as testicular cancer. They saw all this damage that was in there. Later on, it took a lot of specialists to figure out all this scar tissue and all this trauma that happened on the epididymis. They didn't want to do surgery on it. I finally found a doctor that would, and it helped. It relieved my pain. And it was one of the greatest transformations of my life. I'd be walking along and peeing blood in agony at all different times. I mean, it was crippling. And so that about 6-8 months later, my wife did get pregnant. And that was, for me, a turning point. For my family, though, they looked at it with this predatory, what's in her blood. This is a different, is a mixture.
They looked at her as something special then.
Yeah, she's the next ex-child. She's the next keeper of that. So now they look for daughters as breeders. They're looking to renew the line. That's why there's obsession with incest and inbreeding and polygyny. They want to purify that line. And I knew what the path of a chosen one was going to be for her. And if I gave her to them through the family trust, you sign over weeks out of the year to parental rights. And she goes into the system that I went through. She goes through the trials of Apollo and all this other filth.
Wow.
And so we went to war against that, So deliverance for me was in that stage of my life filled with a lot of fear, absolutely terrified, because I didn't know how to fight them without weapons like you see here.
Right.
I didn't know how to fight them with spiritual weapons, but I was learning, and I was studying people like Dr. Michael Lake, Rob Skiba, Steve Quayle, Timothy Alberino, L.A. Marzulli, Russ Dizdar. These were my mentors from afar that were showing me a path of warrior, showing me a path of redemption that did not require me to blow up their houses. And that's where much of my initial deliverance went through, was watching them, seeing what it was they were saying that I needed to do, taking actions and starting to repent and break covenants and seek restoration in these areas of my life. But that was where the first major areas of deliverance were. I did seek out even Russ Dizdar to pray for me. Tom Dunn, who was working with him, who is still kind of carried a lot of his mantle on through the Black channel and their ministry, phenomenal frontline warriors. He's the one who laid hands on me and prayed for me. And that's when that happened, what you see over my shoulder, which is where the pierced hand of Messiah ripped that tree, that black tree of death out of my life, and it sprouted to life in his hand. That was my family's old tree, and he's snatching it from the flames that are going to come. I mean, these immortals, these fallen ones are going to shrivel up. Zephaniah is very clear, the prophecies about the Father is going to bring them, the gods, the immortals. He is going to extinguish them, make them shrivel like raisins. He's going to take away their food source, blood, mankind, from them. They're going to die like men. I know that's their ends. And deliverance for me has been from prayers of others that have laid hands on me, but the vast majority of it came from self-deliverance, from laying out what I needed from the Father and seeking that out and bringing out the other personalities that have been living with this demonic attachments, these false identities, the horrific hells that they were born into. Like part of my personality was fractured and created when they were crushing my epididymis. Parts of my personality were created when I was learning how to cut people's fingers off at the joints because they couldn't carry a ring anymore. Those were fractured pieces that needed healing, and any demonic transmitted diseases that came along with it needed to be cast out. So I am certain nobody needs another man, woman, or child to authorize deliverance to them. They can find that through the great physician.
Amen.
They can find that through the power of his Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh working in their life. He commands the heavenly host, not us.
So what do you think as far as deliverance goes? I think that there's a lot of people out there that need it, and they don't even realize it. They don't even know it. chronic illnesses and things that you just look at and you're like, oh, I'm just sick all the time. This is just the bill of health that I've been given. I feel like there's room for deliverance in that as well. Anyways, I didn't want to even go down that road. But I want to backtrack though, something that you did say. The location, I can't remember what you called it and stuff, but where they castrated you and stuff. One, for the audience that maybe they're new here or something, that is 100% part of the splitting and fragmenting is the trauma. They put people through trauma and that creates these different personalities. And so if you're somebody who feels like there's another part of you that it gets buried a lot, or you're just like I feel like I'm a different person at times, you might want to consider what you've been through in life. You know, even me, like, I mean, I grew up in a very bad, not like nobody can hold a candle to what you grew up in, right? But like
lots can,
but it doesn't need to. Like, that's the thing. Like, everybody has trauma in their life that if it goes unchecked could lead to some kind of fragmenting of your personality. And like the environment that I grew up in was very physically violent. And so like it's just like, there was always this part of me that was just sneak up out of nowhere. It's like a totally different person, you know? But that location where they did that to you, is that still around?
Yeah, it's still an active Catholic church today that you can walk into. The place where they baptize infants, I dropped the heads of people that they sent me to kill as a child in there.
You dropped the heads of people in that building?
You betcha.
Wow.
That's their sacrifices to the goddess. That's the goddess these people memorialize. So that's where they crucified people in that chapel. This
location then is
Our Lady of the Lake Catholic
literally
Church.
Like a front then.
Oh yeah.
So it's not.
It's a temple to a goddess.
Gotcha.
This is the same religion. People, this is the old religions. They all are. She's the goddess is on the Starbucks cup that everybody's drinking from, the cup of demons they all drink out of. That's Echidna. That's the same deity. Yep. These are the same priests. That's the same temple where people make their sacrifices of their money, their time, their worship, their affections, their adorations. Everybody's still caught up in idolatry. They just have been rebranding it to look scientific and materialistic, not recognizing that the forms of idolatry that occupy our churches today, whether it's a steeple, it's called a sun pillar in the scriptures that we put on top of our churches, or it's these crosses of desecration to hold their unholy black masses in. These are still the forms of idolatry that these demons feed off of. These fallen ones need worship. They need the fires of men to kindle in them the ability to keep growing. That iniquity force, that seeing all of the commandments in the scriptures laid out and doing the opposite, sinning, builds their iniquity force. So the more they can get people to transgress, the more they can get them to feed their kingdom power, because they have a battery bank that depletes rapidly when they do their lying signs and wonders, when they get witches who are moving things around in objects and performing white witchcraft and healing through their chi and their prana or their vril. That energy they're channeling is from the fallen, and its battery gets depleted over time and must be recharged.
That's really interesting. So, and the recharging comes from
iniquity, sinning, transgression, breaking the commandments. Sin is the transgression of the Torah, 1 John.
That's really interesting because, like part of the understanding is that, sinning separates you from God, which when you're talking about a cosmic war between good and evil, God, Satan, and there's way more to it than just that. But the idea of wooing people away from God, it's like the ultimate goal is not, in my mind, is not to worship Satan as much as not worship God, not to have that relationship with him. And that process is sinning. That's part of this cosmic war. But what you're saying is also the sinning itself is recharging their battery banks for more transgressions. That's wild.
That's how it's fueled. When someone goes to Our Lady of the Lake Catholic Church in Lake Havasu City, there's a sculpture that looks like Mary, right? Which is a different deity masquerading, encoiled with a serpent at her feet. That is Satan dwelling with her and creating these children. This is so when people go there and pray to Mary, they don't understand what they're doing is praying to this goddess, the Queen of Heaven, as she's referred to in Jeremiah. We're specifically warned, don't participate in these activities with these other deities, whether it's Moloch, who is called Nimrod, that those deities are real. They're not just some kind of ethereal, floaty cloud thing concept. They physically have a form. They exist in actual dominions, reigns, cities. They can be visited.
Yeah.
They can be visited. You can go and talk to them. And these people who are their priests mediate between the mortals, the men, the muggles here, and they go and communicate with them and get orders from them. They get prophecies from them. They get directions from them. They have contracts for what their job assignments are, and they take it as seriously as anybody else. They have orders from a shot caller, and they have to follow them. And when you break those, there is retribution, but that power comes from our sin. This is why when someone who steps out of the regular path of life, the regular worldliness of living, and begins to seek the Father, call upon Yahweh while they can be saved, they begin to call upon the Lord God Almighty and ask for salvation, ask for deliverance and restoration. They get shot to pieces because they have all these doors that have been opened up through sin in their life, and sins of their ancestors, generational curses, oaths that have been sworn. This iniquity force has been building for generations on their bloodline. And should ever one of the children deviate from that, there's hell to pay. And so that's why if you're a generational curse breaker, you're going to suffer tremendously. And the goal of that is deliverance. The goal of that is repentance. It's purging the evil from your midst. It's rooting out the things that are from the other team. You know, smash the physical idols out of your life. Don't covet the silver and gold, no matter how valuable they are. Root them out with violence. Get that stuff out of you and continue to seek the indwelling of His Spirit and find your new identity and your restoration in His Scripture.
That makes a lot of sense. And it kind of, we were talking about before we started recording about kind of the stuff that I've been going through over the last year or so. It makes a lot of sense that, you know, like for instance, I've met my biological father once. Wow. Okay. And I have zero plans to meet him again. Wow. My mom never met her father, her biological father, ever. So like, we don't know what we come from. And you're talking about generational curses, doors that have been opened up through ancestry. Like when you start turning, like I've been open, I'm a Christian the entire time I've done this show. You and I were talking about before we started, the show definitely has changed over the last year or so in a very, hey, we're in a war, a cosmic war. Good and evil is real. Say the supernatural realm is real. You're in this war, really trying to expose the supernatural realm in a way that I don't think happens at church on Sundays, usually. But like, by stepping into that, which wasn't like just a thing that happened accidentally. Like I felt extremely compelled to go that direction to the point that it would be disobedient if I wasn't. There have been attack. And so it's interesting the way you break that down, that, you know, throughout my life, but also people that I've never met, their lives, there have been doors that opened up, and there's like this legal authority that they're trying to claim over me. And there's those spiritual attacks that come. I imagine there's probably a lot of people that go through these things a lot. I mean, your life, the way you describe things and explain things based on your life experiences are far more extreme than most people's lived experiences. But the root of the matter is the same. Like doors are opened, whether it's through your family's ritual abuse on the children, to just living in a household where there's been abuse. You know, those are trauma doors that have been opened, and allowing these things to get their teeth sunk into you. And that then, I guess, rolls over into a life of sin, you know? It's a whole thing. It's very complex.
It is. Well, we're fighting lawyers.
Yes.
Like we're fighting immortal lawyers, like the worst nightmare to have to go up against. You know what I mean? Like if you could think of the worst kinds of adversaries, it'd be easy if they were just pitchforks and horns dudes. It'd be a lot easier.
Very.
It's a lot more nightmaric when the dragon is a legal accuser. That's a far different entity, and the venom that comes from his fangs is very potent, and it's hemorrhagic. It's a neurotoxin. It is absolutely a disruptor of muscle tissue. It's a arrestor and a paralyzer of life. It is incredibly potent, and it's delicious. It is insidiously tasteful when it's going in, but it bites like a viper's fang when it comes out. You know, that's literally part of the consequences of them worshiping the Queen of Heaven, offering their children in fires to Moloch, to Nimrod. This is what they were doing even in the wilderness. They were carrying the star of Remphan. They were sacrificing their children in the wilderness while eating manna. They'd eat manna, then they'd eat their children. Understand, that's the level of depravity, of brokenness that he called his people out of. There's a reason their bodies wasted in the wilderness. It's a lot more than just they doubted. It's a lot more than that. They carried with them their mighty ones, their gods. They set up and erected their towers for a reason. These entities are so much more powerful than people can comprehend. And the greatest deception the enemy has accomplished thus far in the last 150 years is to convince people that the Bible is not supernatural. They have raped our scriptures of all the supernatural elements in there. Like in Isaiah 13, when you pick up a scripture today, a Bible today, and it says, ostriches are going to dwell there, and hairy, shaggy goats are going to dwell there. They took away the word satyr. They don't want people to know about Pan and the Baphomet and Azazel. They don't want his identity known. They don't want people to think that there's an actual hierarchical structure to these entities. They have names and characters and temples and priests. They take away the ostrich, and they give us the ostrich instead of the siren. They take away the mermaid-looking creature with serpentine legs coming out of her rear end. That's a kidnap. That's her. And they don't want people to understand that's what dwells in these places. That's what's in these waters of these lakes. She would, I could throw my blades in water and she would bring them back to me.
Really?
That's what she offers. She offers mystically charged magical weapons to warriors. That's the whole Merlin myth. You know, it's not a myth. These are like histories just repackaged to make them palatable in cultures that it's illegal to talk about it. These people operate under this legal groundwork, and when they need to get their stories out and they want to preserve their legends and their truths, they couch them in mysteries. That's the mystery religion. That's not how the Father operates. Yeshua literally said, I've done everything open in the open. You do what you do in secret. That's a different kingdom. And I was a guardian of the secrets for these families, so I witnessed their oaths, their vows, their ceremonies. I was there brought in to watch them marry children to monsters, to people that looked like men and creatures that were not mankind. I had to bear witness to these atrocities. I had to see people I loved in their pubescent bloom be ravaged, and then watch people take skull cups, the top head of a skull, catch that blood and drink it. That's the filth these people are engaging in. It's not just some kind of abominations. The scriptures are explicit about this stuff for a reason. It's shameful to talk about these things. However, this is the reality of what people's lives are wed to. So when your mom who gives birth to you was conceiving you during that, you got some demonic stuff coming, son. Yeah. You know, there's a reason some people are just, their lives are train wrecks all the time because they're dealing with that at their origin. They don't know they're a moonchild. They have no idea that they were conjured during a Babylonian ritual. But that stuff carries on, and then they have children who have children. And if you look at the branches of that tree behind me, it doesn't take long until you have a lot of ancestors. And that iniquity feeds like an IV line, like the circulatory system, back to the devil, the dragon himself. All of it ultimately goes through his kingdom, his city in the sky. That's his reign.
So this is why I love talking with you, man. I do. I miss this. I was dry. I was dry. I needed my cup filled up because you say things that I'm like. So coming in today, I was like, all right, well, I have an idea this way. We'll take the conversation. And I'm like, nope, throw it all out. Just let it rock. So you brought up a couple things here that I want to kind of reverse on because especially with the audience that we have, like I know they're interested and curious as to what you just said. So you're talking about mermaids, right? So I have a friend of mine who hopefully soon will be in studio talking about his run-ins with mermaids all over the world. And it's not that he was interacting with them like you were, God has just given him the eyes to see, and it's like he has it on video. I've seen the video. You see this humanoid head peeking out of the water, broad daylight, I think off the coast of California. And I think off the coast of California, I don't remember where it was. Anyways, it goes down, and right when it goes down, this big flipper comes up. Like literally manifestation of your classic idea of like a mermaid. Mm-hmm. And then there's also the spiritual side of those things. But maybe you could go into what you referenced about throwing a weapon into the water, bringing back supernaturally charged, and what that looks like. Maybe talk about who or what that is doing that. You referenced the siren, but also you hit on the idea of the mixture of monster and what I think you said, the way you said it, perceived to be human, kind of that mixture. Are we talking about basically, Genesis 6 happening today? Is that what you're talking about? The idea of like mingling of seeds?
Well, let's break that up into two parts.
Please, because
if I get lost in the weeds on the mermaid stuff, circle me back.
I'll try, but
try to remember.
Strong
we got Jack as the backup.
Jack will have to.
Jack's got backup. Thanks, Jack.
There's a strong
We're about to dive down into some filthy, crazy stuff. Okay. So children that come from this is why bloodlines in these families are guarded. They actually matter. Most of us are raised in a culture where it's irrelevant who your dad is beyond what's on your last name when you fill out forms. That's Western American culture. The families guard their covenant of their seed line because they have a ranking structure within a actual hierarchy. They physically sit on a big family tree on a branch that's their rights. They're patriarchal or matriarchal. Some are children of motherhoods and others are children of fatherhoods. And they have different ways of operating and following. There's mothers of darkness, which comes down through a very different sectarian line that's often associated with Azazel and Baphomet and this kind of stuff. And then or dragon worship. Then there's patriarchal ones where they're just following down the father's lineage. So the mothers of the fallen, the mothers of darkness and dragons, they look after their children and custodians. This is what's called a familiar spirit, family spirit. But there is a physical right that a child who comes from the actual bloodline of these nobility has to interact with them that outsiders do not have. This is why certain people can enter a secret society and be advanced in rank and elevated at an extremely rapid pace because they physically have proofing in their bloodline that they've gone through heraldic proofing to verify they have claim to this specific individual. Without that, you're not going to be granted access to these higher rituals. These rituals require you to be able to produce blood that has that seed in it. My contention is that seed, more often than not, is a marker in the spiritual realm that unlocks the doors to these spirits to have access to your life. So when people go in and they invite these spirits in, they swear these oaths, like one of the rituals that they'll use for this, the worshipful master, he wears it looks like the eye of Horus, and it's got a blue eye in the center of it. And they basically, the initiate or the one who's trying to come into it, he sees a sheet of paper held up and he can't read it. They tell him to read it. He can't read it. And it's blank. But basically he asks him a way of seeing, basically I'm blind, I can't see, and he has him place the initiate, his hand on that symbol, on the eye. This is the eye of Ra, right? Mm-hmm. This is the dragon. This is Azazel. He places his eye on there. And then he says, now basically, I give you your sight. That's the fire that they're all obsessed with, these Luciferians. It's the ability to see in the darkness where the masses cannot see behind the veil. Then they turn him around and he sees paper with all this writing on it from these spells, these incantations. And now he's been given the gift of sight. That ritual is a blinding to that man. because now he has bound himself in iniquity to Satan. He has now pledged his fidelity to the dragon. And the vision that he's been given is only going to come through the scales of the dragon, physical things that go onto people's eyes and augment their vision so they can see into the spiritual realm, and they can see into the ultraviolet. They can see into a frame of light that our human eyes are not given for a reason. The Father banned us from that in the garden because he loves us.
Right.
And he does not want us to dabble with demons.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for us. He has heavenly hosts that are more than capable of dealing with these things. We don't need to be shooting ourselves off into astral planes to make war.
It's a very specific design that he made us for.
Dang right.
Yeah.
We got a great priesthood job to do here, and it's more than enough work to do on this earth. He's got his guys to do that labor for us. But when that opening of the eye happens, that person now has in their bloodline, in their union, a door that's propped open to the kingdom of darkness. And if his son tries to break out of it and take the path of redemption and deliverance, all of that comes after him. Well, there's similar initiations that take place with those that have a heraldry to the mothers. They are protected in battle by her. This is what goes to a lot of the ideas surrounding God's coming down and helping men when they're fighting. Echidna has this ability to go through bodies of water. She can teleport herself into bodies of water all over the world at any given time. It's like a kind of a false omnipresence. But if you are caught up in a situation and you need a weapon, if you've made an offering to her, which is what it is, it's a sacrifice to her of one of your weapons of war, she will give it back to you at a time of your distress or the time that you call upon her. However, the pregnant pause on the end of that is you must return it with blood. So when you send it back to her, it's got to be bathed in the blood of your enemies. And this is literally, once I go back to, they need that to live. They need that to live. Under the London Bridge, where these chambers are set up, where the dragon would come and these other entities would come, they had slits between the cement so that the blood would go down into Lake Havasu City Lake to impregnate the waters, to feed the goddess and to give the feeding to the dragon. That's the defiling act of what's happening, and why it's so powerful when people begin to pray and ask the Father to forgive the sins that have been committed in this place, to break the power of iniquity, to forgive the sins of our ancestors all the way back to Adam. Because at the end of the day, no matter what kind of womb we were grown in or came from, we can still petition the Creator to apply the blood of Yeshua to go all the way retroactively to undo the workings of these wicked ones. And that is the weapon of mass destruction against their kingdom. That's how you rip the tree up by its roots.
So you feel free to keep going in any direction you want. I just want to clarify, because you just said something that I recently have been seeing people, I don't know where I've seen it. Maybe it's been brought to me that we get emails about it or something, but we got to stop for a second and just clarify to people so they understand that the things that we're talking about can be undone through the blood of Jesus Christ. So I don't remember what episode it was, but recently I had done an episode with somebody and something was said that made people feel like, wait, are you telling me there's no hope for me? And it's like, no, I would never say that. And I operate on the assumption that you understand that. So I just want to put it out there for people. Some of the things that you're saying and stuff, like if they feel like they're following the same line, like there is absolutely redemption available. And you've been either brought up or even just in a spiritual sense brought up, manipulated to believe that's not possible. How many times do you hear it, people say, you talk to somebody and you're like, hey man, this is my life. So you're like, hey man, can I talk about Jesus? and they're like, well, Jesus can't save me. I've done a lot of bad things. And it's like, that's a lie. Whether you've learned that from parents or grandparents to the demonic entities that have their teeth in your shoulder, that's a lie. And so there's redemption for everybody. And I just wanted to say that because it made me think recently we had that. And I was like, I'd never want to paint a picture for somebody to think that they couldn't be redeemed, So anyways, I don't know if I just hijacked
That's
it
so
there,
good.
but
The best thing you can hijack for is the gospel to every creature.
Yeah.
Mark 16, he said, go therefore into all the nations and preach the gospel of the kingdom to every creature.
Yeah.
Some of us don't believe. We are humans. Some of us are radically convinced we are irredeemable.
That's what I think it was. I think it was the idea of Rh negative bloodline being a Nephilim
there's
type.
all that stuff in there.
Yeah.
But what about clones? What do you do with clones? And what do you do with people that were genetically engineered? What do you do with transhuman? What do you do with the people that are hybrids? Like, these are people I talk to. I talk to guys who are actively consuming blood to live. I'm trying to
because they're active vampires.
They're real vampires.
Yeah.
Like, they're not human.
Yeah.
They're not. They have
Were
humanity.
they human at one time?
They have humanity, right? But they also are carrying a completely different set of genetics that's not from man. This is there are the sons of the fallen still exist here, and some of them just have bastard sons that don't know who they are. Many of them. This is why 23andMe and Ancestry.com gets billions of dollars from Mormons and from secret societies to finance the collection force of looking for their sons. They're looking for their children. They're terrain mapping the environment before they harvest us. That's what they're looking for. There is a path of deliverance and redemption for anything that desires forgiveness, that desires to be in a covenant with the Creator, Yahuwah. They can have that relationship back with Him, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've been through, no matter what's happened to you. There is a path of salvation, because the blood of the Lamb, the words of our testimony, are the most powerful weapons that we have been given as soon as we are set free from the fear of death and holding on to our lives. I had to be willing to let go of what I was promised. I went through hell over and over and over and over and over again. I watched my family and children who were completely innocent be desecrated. And I watched the people that did it grow in power and praise and get presidential nominations. It breaks you when you witness things like that. It makes you enraged, and I wanted to burn them down. I wanted violence for the rest of my life. And you know what? There's someone who will come along and offer you violence. There's someone who will come along, and he came along to me when I was sitting in a sandbox in my parents' house in Flagstaff, Arizona, Patterson Boulevard. It's a little child playing in the sand, and a man in a suit walked up, and he sat down next to me. And he had a presence on him that was nothing like anything I've ever experienced in this life. It was a man of complete authority, total confidence, absolute sovereignty. Most people don't interact with kings. They've lost a sense of understanding of what authority and respect looks like embodied. But he had a dominion about him, and I knew he had the kingdom of the earth under his feet. This was the devil sitting next to me, and he looked like an ordinary man, but when he spoke, it was power, it was beauty, it was elegance, and he offered me power. He offered to complete me. He offered me what my earthly father would never give me, which was freedom. When a slave is too far gone, they give up. I was so damaged goods, every area of my body. There was no innocence left in me. And he offered me a way out. He offered me a key to unlock deliverance that was in a different kingdom and a different covenant. And he drew in the sand next to me my name, Nathan, but he drew it in Hebrew. And it's Nun Tav Nun. That's how you spell it. It looks like almost like a lightning bolt for the Nun, and then an X for the Tav, and then another lightning bolt. And he said, I'm going to complete the work in you. And he drew a circle over the X, which was the dragons eating its tail. And he said, you will be my ambassador on this earth. And I wanted that freedom. And I believed he had the power to give me that. And that was my first interaction with the dragon. That was my first understanding of his character and his identity, because the promise that he gave me there was exactly what I needed, was what I wanted. But what I wanted was more than what anything on this earth could give me. I had only known being sold. I'd only known what my price was. What I sold myself for too short a price because I was so devalued. But later on in my life, the Father showed me what that was. He showed me what that other covenant was. And he began to show me and dismantle that work so that his work was left unfinished in my life. No matter what kind of deals people have made with demons, with lawyers, physical kinds, they can be broken. They can be broken. And that devil wasn't done with me. He had another time with me where he came in a very different form.
Okay, so we are definitely not going anywhere else but this. All right. And I want to hear the next form, but this is exactly what I was talking to you about before we started recording. The Jack, am I right? Am I hearing this right? Yeah. So I told you last year I released an episode that opened up floodgates of spiritual warfare. This is it. Like, so I want to say it's episode 692 and 693. 693, different story, same topic. This is incredible. So I want people to understand, and I'm talking to the audience right now. You obviously here, you consider yourself part of the audience. I'm not good with organization, okay? But I did just hire a manager, so he's going to help me. But I'm terrible with keeping track of things. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that in one way or another have gone through a recruitment. And one of the guys sitting at this table started manifesting Lilith about, a year ago? We had to cut the cameras. But 692, the listeners probably know this. If you don't, listen to it. It's about this guy who was a child, like you, who found himself walking through a cave system. We haven't even touched the underground yet with you. Found himself walking through a cave system. And it opens up into, if this is my recollection, and sometimes I get the stories crossed because I hear very similar things. But it opened up into a large room, and there's a man standing there dressed in a suit who is recruiting him to work for him. I have a friend, JR, in Indiana, who was, as an adult, having sex with his girlfriend. All of a sudden, he's gone, walking through a cave system. He gets to his big open room, and he actually hears a voice saying, "You're now entering the throne room." Man dressed in a suit, recruiting him to work for him. He rejected. He said no. He found himself back in his bedroom, and as far as I know, hasn't been recruited since. The kid accepted, and it started this entire life of supernatural warfare. I believe he was operated on by what was labeled by him as angels and Nephilim. I believe Nephilim, fallen angels, more than likely fallen angels. But he was operated on to give special abilities. He's tried to get out of this. I haven't been able to talk to the guy. It was his friend that was relaying the story. But he has tried to get out of this, and trying to get out of it is what spawned the guy I was talking to, his part of the story, because this entity came for him. What you just described is so similar to what I've heard before. And those are just two people. I have another guy in Indiana who I've never even talked to on the show or anything, like maybe one day. But he said to me randomly, before I even released this episode, he was like, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but when I was a kid, I was in like some kind of weird realm, lucid dream, and I was recruited by an entity to work for it. I have a guy in British Columbia who's an active witch who was recruited to work for this entity. There's several I'm missing, but it's a common theme." And you and I, before we started talking or recording officially, I started describing this. And maybe what I was describing to you then doesn't match this now, but like you mentioned this idea of a finder's club. And my brain started glitching when you said that, because calling it the Finders Club is probably one of the more accurate ways that I view this. And you have no idea, dude. Like, I have yet to find one person who has been recruited by the same entity. It's always a different entity. And when you called it the Finders Club, it goes right into my line of thinking and what I've been trying to convey to people, which is like, yes, Satan versus God, fallen angels, all this stuff. But there is like levels to this. And if you're heavenly angels and you find the will to rebel against God, I gotta think you got an ego enough to think that you're better than your peers. And as much as we're in a war of God versus evil and all that stuff, I think there's sub wars that are happening, that these entities are warring with each other. The Finders Club, trying to pick people, recruit people to come work for them.
Change teams.
Dude, like, I had no idea how, like, first of all, I didn't even know about, and I know for a fact you never mentioned that on another show, because that would have triggered me right away. Because this story that I released in October last year, I've held on to for 3 years. Wow. I've had it since I lived in Pennsylvania, because I was tracking things down. I've been able to verify so much of this story. And without going into great detail about all that, I want to just bring it back to, like, this is the direction I want to go right now, because this story from last October that I released, and the sub stories that I've uncovered in what you're saying, has been such a molding thing for me in my life to understand how deep the warfare goes. And I mean, I don't understand. Like, I mean, listen, I'm trying to understand. Like, I'm not a theologian and stuff, but I have this like bubbling sense, if that makes sense. Like, I don't have the words to articulate what I feel inside about this, but like, I passionately believe every day I wake up is a day of battle and war that I've been born into. And stories that you just shared and the stories that I just shared are manifestations, visual representations, story representations of what that war is always. And I need people to understand how serious this is. We talked about the idea of supernatural existence and people not believing it. Like, you have to understand, it doesn't matter what you think.
Right.
It doesn't matter. This is reality. And the more we get closer to the end, the more the supernatural is going to spill out into this realm. And you will, at some point, have no choice but to understand, to acknowledge that it's real. You said before you sat down, we were talking about the kids and how the kids are going to see things that beyond our wildest dreams. And when you say kids, I could say my kids, your kids, to their kids. I don't know. But I do know that the future generations are going to experience and be exposed to the supernatural realm in ways that I only talked about on a podcast.
Yeah.
And so
it will be their normal.
Yeah.
It will become their normal.
And it's all reversing back to what it used to be.
Back to Babel.
Dude. So giving that word vomit to you,
I feel free. There's no vomit there, bro. That was pure.
I needed to lay that out to you so you hopefully understand where I'm coming from on this. I've never been recruited. I 100% believe people have been recruited. They are being recruited. It's active. It's happening. And they are trying to come to collect what they believe is theirs. And this initial guy that I talked to about his friend, he tries cutting it off. I guess he thought he did it right until it wasn't right anymore. And this entity came collecting. I've heard people describe man in a black suit several times to the point that I have a hard time remembering who described what it was wearing, but a lot of times black description, it's wearing black or black suit. And I used to think when I first started looking at all this, I was like, what is this entity? Is it Satan? Is it an ancient god? Now I'm coming to understand the man in the black suit or the man dressed in black isn't an entity. It is multiple entities. And I strongly believe that they are in competition with each other, the Finders Club. And you saying Finders Club, like I wrote it down and then you telling me that, I had no idea that, and maybe the Finders Club is something completely different, but in my brain, the way it's connecting, I'm like, that's essentially what these entities are doing. It's like a competition of finding their next slave.
Mm-hmm. And their next ambassador.
Perfect way to say it.
Much different than their next slave. He elevated me from slavery. Do you understand? It's like when a king comes out and sits in a field with a slave, he has something in mind. He has a different agenda than what the slave thinks. What was I thinking about that day versus what was on his mind? Could not be more contrasting. Cannot even fathom the disparity between those two mindsets. But what was in my mind was desperation for justice, willing to do anything to have one shot at one of these perverts. Just I wanted to die killing them. That's it. That's all I wanted. I wanted to die. That addiction to death was because the first covenant I entered into was with death. It was with death. Different entity, critical information, Anubis, Anut, Hermes, different entity. The final enemy that is thrown into the lake of fire is death. He will be consumed. That's not happened yet, y'all. That entity was my first covenant. Well, that entity was created in the garden. It said, for in the wisdom of Solomon, the envy of the devil, death was conceived. That conception point for death came through the birthing womb of envy, lust, covetousness. So when I saw the devil, I had lust, like lust. When I saw him the second time, I was consumed with lust. Like I was looking at the most beautiful thing that I'd ever seen, regarding it with just a desire to be it, to put it on myself. I was caught up between these two worlds because one side of me was a harbinger of death, but I was being invited to be elevated to a bigger kingdom, to the dragon's kingdom. And this creates animosity. This creates tension because my familiar spirit, not death himself, I've never witnessed what I believe was the actual entity death. I believe I only ever interacted with one of his messengers, one of his servants, a spiritual being who had physical powers, but not death. He sent his princes. The devil didn't. He came to me, and this was an act of love to me. It's communicated to me love. Like I mattered enough that someone who actually regarded me would sit down and talk to me rather than just confuse me more. But when the next time I saw him was in the London Bridge, and inside the chambers that are beneath it, the foundations of it, they would set up throne room, literal throne room with a black throne. And that had gold, like almost like a obsidian color black granite, but then it had this fine gold inlay, just beautiful, and it was like light almost emanated from it. It was just beautiful.
This was under London Bridge?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there's an old world tunnel system to this gathering point that the United States military tapped into back in the 30s and 40s during World War II when they built what's called Site 6 in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. It wasn't a city at all. It was just a desert, the place near death. That is the cardinal point, a meeting place where the gods, these immortals, physically would meet and have parley. They would meet and interact there without threat of retribution and violence. That they could have conversations there and make plans and renew covenants or break them at that site. That was a place where they would gather in the desert. So when Site 6 was built, they built in underground infrastructure to supply and resupply United States Army Air Base, because the Air Force wasn't there yet, It was a rest and recuperation zone, a secret place where soldiers and pilots could come and rest and recuperate. Sin City. Site 6.
Lake Havasu.
Lake Havasu became from Site 6. Like Site 6 is what it was named. It was a dot on a map, classified map. That's all it was. Robert P. McCulloch is who bought Site 6 from the military and from the state of Arizona. He bought the territory there. There was no lake. They built eventually what's called the Parker Dam. Parker Dam is what feeds the vast majority of water and electricity, not only to Phoenix, but over to Los Angeles. They built an entire tunnel system that takes that bloody infested water I just described to you. That's what people drink in these cities all over the West Coast that are in deserts. That's what people drink in Phoenix and Tucson, and they pump that water and that electricity, which is generated power from that iniquity, and they literally power up the world. That's their gathering place. Wow. That when Robert P. McCulloch, he hired a man named C.V. Wood, who was the chief architect who built Disneyland.
I was going to say, I knew that.
And this intermingles with the Jason projects and the people that are in Southern California that were doing secret scientific experiment projects on children and mind control operations. He literally, his Wikipedia page has been edited since, but it used to literally say he did MK experiments on that lake. Robert P. McCulloch did. Wow. And they built a pleasure island, a little island in Lake Havasu City Lake, which is a sovereign territory of the city of London. It's an embassy for ambassadors. Different representatives of different nations can go there and are immune from prosecution, just like Disney World is in Florida. It is not United States territory. This is why when Governor DeSantis is trying to enforce taxes, they invoke a clause which says, oh, by the way, we're under the crown.
Yes.
Yeah, which crown? The red dragon. If you look at this, the heraldic symbol of the city of London, it is guarded by the red dragon. That is the financial empire of the world, and they own territories for their ambassadors all over the world. This is one of them. That little place.
And just we're talking Site 6, Lake Havasu, Arizona. When you say ambassador, you're talking about. Are we talking about like human ambassadors? Or are we talking about
humankind and the spiritual kind?
This is a place
they have to meet. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You got to talk.
So these are portal locations.
It's not phone calls
that they come and meet.
Like it wasn't always phone calls. Remember, they led mankind to build the technology so they could call us. Before this, people interfaced like this.
Yes,
you had to meet with your ambassador. That's why he calls us in the scriptures ambassadors. He's trying to communicate to us something that we're divorced from, because most people aren't raised by spies working for the State Department and children of the CIA. But when you do, you raise them up understanding we are all here. The only reason we live here in this country, in this territory, in this region is to serve the will of the ambassador, to serve the sovereign that we represent. That's how they operate. It's the same MO. That's why intelligence organizations are all patterned and fractured off of the kingdom of darkness's hierarchy, because it's one filled with subterfuge. But in that, when they brought the London Bridge over from the city of London, from Thames River, 80 bodies were discovered under this. You can watch this in the Travel Channel documentary where they go inside the bridge on a Ghost Hunters episode, and you can see these chambers. You can see them talking to spirits that are inside there. You can see these places for yourself. The historian on the channel says that 80 bodies were found, including 5 children, because they'd practiced inurement. They were burying people alive in the foundation stones to charge the iniquity in the very rocks of the building.
How do they define that whole thing then?
They call it immurement.
Really?
It's a technical term. This is like a legal word, bro. Dictionary stuff. This is like real stuff. It's just we are desensitized to it and told this is fairy tales. London Bridge is falling down as a song about something else, but it's about that. If you don't sacrifice your children into the stones, the city's government is going to collapse. This is where the rulers held court. This is where they hung prisoners. This is where they tortured and mutilated people. This is where the cannons of Napoleon's army that were used for bloodshed were melted down and cast into the lights on the bridge. They're still there to this day. All that got shipped there to be a charged portal for these meetings. C.V. Wood designed a mind-controlled town that mimicked the city of London. Buckingham Palace's gates are over there, literal ones. The chariots of the gods, the kings, is literally sitting in the hotel lobby. You walk in there, you're going to find their gods everywhere. It's a freak show. But the boardwalk that's all there has tunnel systems going up in there that were used for child pornography, that were used for human processing of meat, physical meat and cannibalism products. That entire shops and facility site there, they called it a travel agency. That's how people could book reservations with children. That's still active today. I went there with Tom Dunn, man. We had young men, children prostituting themselves to us. Still there to this day.
Really?
It's still there. It's not going anywhere. These people, my grandfather, the Zarnowskis, are still raping and ruining the lives of children. Every freaking day I'm out here doing this is to try to shine a brilliant light to try to protect the innocents who are still getting victimized. I'm not doing this for me, man. I want to watch those children be set free. I want them to be vindicated. And I want the villains to burn or repent.
Amen.
You got a little bit of time left, you know?
Yeah.
But that dragon who sits over those thrones really meets people there. And that's why he was so venerated there.
This is wild. This is fascinating. So so London Bridge, Lake Havasu, obviously other locations, right? These are meeting locations where we could say the middle ground, right? So it's like designated ground where we come in our physical, they manifest from their place to have these meeting locations. I'm assuming you had this recruitment and were exposed to these locations after the recruitment.
Yeah. Well, I'd been exposed to some of them before then, but then my family followed the dragon wherever he went around the country.
Okay.
I was his ambassador. That was my job. I could talk to him. I could hear and discern the tongue of the Nahash after a ritual that happened in that bridge when I drank his venom.
So you could hear him.
I could understand him, not hear him. People can hear him. Anybody can hear him. There's a difference between when they speak in their tongue, their dialect. It's literally... It's confusion to us, like normal ears. But I went through very specific rituals with the Ophit. These are like the serpent priests, very freaking perverse dudes, creeps. I've been around freaks. These guys were different things of binding themselves with. Like they were literally bound with snakeskin, like to where it was impregnated into their flesh. Like it had become part of their anatomy. It's freak stuff. I don't know what the heck they are. Just a lot of confusing things that were happening with that. But they, in order to open my ears to hear the tongue of the Nahash, they did a ritual where they took me, they pioneered in Phoenix. Okay, Phoenix is literally another name for Apollo. That's his capital. He's literally going to reign there. The beast, when he rises from the bottomless pit, he's going to physically reign in Phoenix, Arizona. People can think what they want with this. The devil is physically going to reign from Denver, Colorado. He's the timekeeper.
From Denver or Phoenix?
The devil, separate entity, will reign from Denver, Colorado, or Boulder, depending on which of the two he sets his nest. Every one of us who's watching this today, every one of you is listening to this because a single piece of technology communicates all time to everything from the most advanced nuclear submarine on the bottom of the sea to our little iPhone sitting here. And it broadcasts everything from National Institutes of Science and Technology in Boulder, Colorado, from a special device that sends out a signal. We call it the atomic clock. He follows the timekeepers. There was a time when it was in England. There was a time when it was Greenwich. That was where the timekeeper set up his nest. He is the governor of time. That's his function and his role. And he has this ability to manipulate people's perception of time and their understanding of the future. Because on one side, he's a master manipulator of human behavior, and he can literally bring about prophecies by manipulation and coercion and using the prophets of Baal through media, entertainment, music, empire to bring these things to come to pass. Why is everyone trying to make a lightsaber? Why is everybody trying to build these technologies they've seen in the movies? Because his prophets were sent on a mission to put the ideas in the hearts of man, a false fire, to conceive them and bring them forth, because he can't do the creative act himself. So he uses and deploys his ambassadors to do that, to distribute the funds to those who are worthy to advance his cause. That's his modus operandi. Apollo has a very different approach because he is still bound. He is not risen. He is in darkness in the bottomless pit and locked up. And if you want to go talk to him, you have to be a carrier of the X, which is the covenant of his kingdom, a child of his throne, and be able to die, go down into the bottomless pit and talk to him. So they literally performed a medical procedure where they packed my body, like a table like this, all surgical steel room, and it was deep, like a bathtub, with a drain in the center, and they laid me inside there. And they brought in a group of people dressed in robes, but nothing special, like dudes, creeps, freaks. But then they brought in a different thing who was completely covered in blood, like huge quantities of blood, like enough, like 5 gallons of 5-gallon buckets worth of blood. I know how much blood it takes to cover a person. And he was covered in blood, like he had stood under a shower and bathed in blood, red, vibrant, fresh blood. And he was not human. Not like the others. And then another one of those came in all in blue, like sapphire blue, cold as ice, devoid of life, not charged up whatsoever. And one stood at my feet and the other stood at my head. And they began to bring in this piece of equipment, which was huge, like a rolling refrigerator. And they brought it into the side of the table. And they hooked me up to an IV and ran my blood into this machine that was like a similar to a dialysis machine, but different. And then they began to pour buckets of ice onto my body, filling up the tub. Meanwhile, these guys around are chanting and doing this incantations in the tongue of the Nahash, which sounds like gibberish, slow motion video that's run backwards, and it's very disturbing. But as they pulled the blood out of my body, I began to go into hypothermia, and then I went into cardiac arrest until they pulled the blood out of my body and were cooling it down further inside there till I died. And when I died, they were casting me into Sheol. They were casting my spirit down with this ritual to go and speak to Apollo, to go and talk to him. But there's and this, I say it, man, the earth is honeycombed. It is a massive cavernous system of worlds that are down there. And I am familiar with some of them, but nothing like what I saw in here. It was like a sea-sized space with a cavity that was vast, and I was on one side of it. And there was no way to get across this lake. It was like a pure lake of confusion.
You're dead right now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Biologically dead, spiritually alive. Biologically heart stopped. Whatever else freak is occupying or doing whatever with my body up there. This is a real medical procedure. They actually do this stuff. They pioneered it in Phoenix with these cults. That's where they started doing this procedure for them. It's one they use now for medical procedures on a regular basis. That lake, that boundary waters, I could not cross over. And so I called to the dragon to come to me. But it was the first dragon that came was black. The second one that came was white. And one talked in pure confusion, the tongue of the Nahash, and I could not understand him.
The white one?
The black one.
The black one.
And the white one had a means of communicating to me normally, like English. And he offered to me like an egg, but like the sun, bright, glowing. And I ate that and I could understand him. And once I understood him, they took me across this waters of chaos to a literal throne room, a literal palace, all this black stone with that gold inlay.
From England? The same thing? Like underneath the London Bridge, I think you were describing?
Similar throne.
Okay.
Same stone, okay. I would say. Whatever that stone is the same material they're getting out of the earth.
Gotcha. Okay.
Not like, I'm obsessed with stones. Love them. I hunt them all over this country. Never seen a stone like it before or since. I've seen lots of black granites, seen lots of obsidians, volcanic glasses, indokyanites, all kinds of stuff. Never identified a mineral that's like it. But in there, it was cold and empty of all things you and I would associate with joy. Like a presence. Have you ever been in a complete soundproof room where there's nothing? Like nothing. And that's what it felt like. Everything I stepped on, everywhere I went. And there was ultimately a throne room with that Apollo there, like a man, just a little taller, but just a man, not dressed up, just a man. And he had red priests next to him. And he prophesied to me who he wanted to recruit, who he wanted to be promoted, and who he wanted killed. That was what I was given. And I was given his instructions in my mouth. And at that point, I was 33 minutes of this time where they had me out, was brought back to life physically and came out of the pit, was literally brought out of it. And I believe by an angel, you know, well, I don't know what team. I have no idea, dude. I don't know. I don't know. Something, a man lifted me out of it. I don't know who he was. I don't know his identity, but a man lifted me from that pit. That when I came out of it, I was speaking the tongue of Nahash, and they were writing down the interpretation of the tongues, the names, and the places that were given for the people that were to be recruited and the people that were to be killed and the people to be promoted. That's what I went through that ritual to do. That opened my ears to hearing the Nahash. And I've had to deal with them sending people or spirits through technology speaking the tongue of Nahash since. And it's not a language we want.
Tongue of the Nahash through technology.
Yeah.
We're going to go there at some point for sure.
Heck yeah, man.
Because I have the headphones on the table for a reason, because
it gets weird.
We had some, exactly.
Exactly. You've been subliminally preparing me for that conversation.
Oh, how perfect. Nathan, I love talking to you, man. I feel like there's not a whole lot of people in this world that can carry that actually can verbalize the intensity that I feel inside. And so
comes with price.
You're talking about, I wrote it down here, recruited, promoted, killed.
That's the finders.
That's what I was going to say.
That's the finders.
Okay.
Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. That's their club.
Wow.
So who do they leave to weep? Widows, orphans, fatherless. And then they recruit their children by the very same hands of the person that killed their father. So that kind of perversion.
So, all right, if I'm trying to identify a finder, would it be Apollo? Would it be you, or the ones that you gave that interpretation to?
Well, Apollo does not have dominion on the earth now. He's physically imprisoned in his kingdom.
So it'd be one of his minions.
He's in the bottomless pit until they unlock him and let him loose.
Is he one of the angels from like Jude 1:7, I think, where it's like locked away from the transgressions that they did?
He's not an angel. He is a man who became another thing.
So he's not like a fallen
entity.
angel.
He became another thing.
Oh, you're saying Apollo?
That's Nimrod.
Okay, so
Nimrod.
I don't know. I don't know the legend. I don't know how to describe it, but
the history.
The history of Apollo.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
he goes by Dionysus. He goes by a lot of different names. Remember, Yahuwah's weapon at Babel, they built a great city, which was the throne of Satan, the Eye of Ra, a physical city that he would ascend into the heavens with and live as Mount Olympus, we call it in other mythology, physically live in the sky in a cloaked city. That's his city in the sky that you'll see referenced all over, like the Death Star that's going to come back when the Father casts him down to the earth. Woe to you, inhabitants of the earth, because the God of this age has come down. The dragon's come down and he has great wrath. He's only got 42 months. But his shot caller on the earth is going to be the beast who rises. That's Apollo. It's not some Nikolai Carpathia and Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins Left Behind series brainwashed America and the world to think that it's some dude who's going to just show up one day and be real politically active. Not that guy. It's named in the Bible explicitly for a reason. It's not like questionable thing. Death follows him. That's Anubis. That's the jackal-headed god. That's the false prophet. It's plainly said in the scriptures. They are going to come and physically inhabit actual thrones on the earth. The dragon, the devil, Azazel, is going to give his power, his reign, over to Apollo. They won't go by these names, right? They'll call him like the traveler. They're going to call him celestial hosts, these gods, these aliens that have come, the guys who gave us life. Thank you, Prometheus. Those guys. That'll be much more the narrative that's conducive for their agenda. But these X-Men, like, they are literally children, bloodline inheritance children from Nimrod, the tower. Others come from other gods, other immortals that taught the secrets of heaven. It's not always that they had sex with women to inseminate their seed. Sometimes they took their blood, they feed on humans, they get blood in their bodies, and when they run out, it physically runs out of their body, they need to recharge. They can give that blood to people to make them their children in a different way that circumvents the curse. They're lawyers and they're looking for loopholes. And if they let you drink their blood and not inseminate you, they've got a way out from the judgment. And so that's one of the ways they do it. The other way is they teach mankind how to use specific plant hormones like auxins and cytokines to augment growth. This is where a lot of the giants post-flood came from, is genetic manipulation through the use of plants. Hence why I brought the plants.
Are those going to make me grow big?
Some of those will kill you instantly.
Some
of those will heal you. And one of those will kill you very, very, very slowly.
I'm not sure if the camera is picking up. No. Okay, good.
He's
okay,
like,
cool.
Jack, go get it.
Yeah.
Go hunting, Jack. Don't touch some of those. You don't have the immunity I do.
I will not.
I really strongly recommend it.
I thought I smelled something different.
That's nice.
Here.
That's the Mariposa. That's beautiful love flower.
Okay,
that's for healing trauma. That's what Yah gave us for medicine. Those little pink fluffy umbrellas of life. Look at that.
It's not going to kill me, right?
No, this is life. It won't kill you if you sniff it even. But
okay.
But this smells delicious, doesn't it? It does. You'll see these everywhere. People think of them as weed trees out here, but this is an amazing plant. That flower boiled in tea helps you process emotional trauma straight up. It's like actually helps you to support anxiety, seasonal affective disorder, all the stuff that causes people despair and loneliness and sorrow. This thing's there to just help you heal with that. It's a gift from our creator. All of these are all of these are medicines, even though, yes, one of them is super toxic.
Stay away from that one.
It's hemlock. It's amazing. We can talk about poisons, but getting sidetracked.
Yeah,
Keep going. Go back.
And I'm trying to remember how do we get sidetracked on that? I don't even remember. So we're talking about the structure. And so what you're painting an image of, though, is the complexity that I lack the verbiage to
articulate
display.
About the finders and the end times agenda.
Yeah, it's like I just the most simplistic way I find to be able to convey to people, because again, I'm still learning and it's a lot of like inner gut stuff that I have going on. Is that I tell people that the supernatural realm is far more complex than you could possibly imagine. And what you're talking about is that.
It's like an espionage film that just lives out day and night. You know, these people have very different kingdoms that they're serving, and that's why they'll try to steal somebody else's star talent.
When you wake up in the morning, not you per se, I mean, yeah, you, but anyway, I'm just talking to people in general. Like when you wake up in the morning, people have to understand that it is go time, wartime. It's happening right now. And if you can start adopting this mentality of you are in a fight every day, and you're not going to understand, just like a soldier doesn't understand the complexity of the war it's fighting in. That's where we find ourselves in. Like, do we think that the guys back in 2002, 2003, when Iraq was really hitting off, do we think that the soldiers that were over there fighting in that war truly understood what they were fighting in? No, of course not. Of course not. Because it's a need to know basis. And so this complexity of this spiritual, supernatural war has levels, and it has levels from manifesting into this realm to subterranean to you leaving your body because your body's dead and talking to these beings. It's crazy. So like when we talk about the Finders Club, is it possible for you to try to like if you say Finders Club, what are we talking about? Like, are we talking about fallen angels, a mixture of fallen angels and ancient gods? Like, what is this? Or is it just more of like a term of expression club? And it's not really like a club, but I can't get past this idea of hunting for people and recruiting them to, and maybe it's not always people, you know? But yeah, I guess we can go there and then just let it evolve again.
Well, it is a club. It's a club. It's an agency that has legal authority on the earth. Like, their physical human assets on the earth operate as covert agents do in what's called a non-permissive environment. So they are trained physically to operate as a spy, because what they're doing is physically illegal in the countries they're doing it in, which is taking people out of their current life, sometimes very violently, sometimes kidnapping. It's not always such a gentle invitation. Sometimes they are collecting children that have been named in ritual, like what I just described. There's rituals that are done with different deities, different gods being invoked, who have names that come onto the priest's lips, who they go and collect them. They will steal them, kidnap them, take them by force, and bring them to the coven. This is how children are fed into the Finders Club. There are other times where they send out recruiters, okay? The recruiter's job is to persuade and make an invitation to somebody who has a positional status that's not often high up in worldly terms. That tends to be somebody that is mid-level in their life.
The recruiter.
The person they recruit is often not at their peak. You know what I'm saying? They're not
There's
on
room
the
to
number
grow.
one. There's lots of room to growth, because you have this person's been dealing with lawyers when they're at their peak for a long time. And they've heard lots of lying offers come their way. It's a lot more difficult to impregnate yourself into their life and parasitically feed off of them. They've had to deal with parasites for decades. Whereas people, before they go onto a meteoric rise, they're open and willing. They're willing to make a deal. Lots of people today will post videos of them saying, I will sign on the line. I'll do it. Problem is, they will.
I got somebody coming to the studio a few weeks that was offered that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got consequences, you know, but their job is to they're a headhunter. Their job is to bring in the talent and bring them back to the cult. So this can be different cults. I've seen cults and covens that were operating specifically for the United States military. That's all they brought in talent for the military. And this starts as children. They send out their Finders Clubs through programs like GATE, Gifted and Talented program. That's where they will impregnate finders, psychologists, counselors, school therapists. That will literally be their recruitment hands in the physical organizations of the education system. It's also special eds and the disciplinary side of the equation. That is a place where they are bringing recruitment. Then you have the secret society ambassadors, and their job is to impregnate themselves into various oath-keeping fraternal and maternal organizations, whether it's the Daughters of the Eastern Star or whether it's people that are Rosicrucians. They will insidiously sow themselves in, like Jesuits do, into every one of these and look and talent scout those that may not know they have bloodline inheritances that are privy to them. That bloodline inheritance, remember, is the iniquity. It's a lot deeper on those people because it goes back to the time of the origin point of desecration on their bloodline. That's what they're looking for. It's not because you are a god in their minds. They're looking for you because the battery bank, when we drain you physically sometimes, when they physically pike you and drain you, is way more potent for a product that they can sell. Spiritually, it enhances their rituals. That recruitment agency is insidiously sown itself all over the place. This is the president's spiritual advisor. That's her positioning. That's her positioning, is to be like Balaam was for Pharaoh. That's the magicians that were contending with Moses, his sons. That's finders for the fallen ones. So that others will call it the network. That's more of the maybe more scientific kind of methodology. But in every arena of our society, the finders have impregnated themselves to do their duty, which at times is silent killing, which at times is active recruitment. And at other times, it's the eradication of a familial line.
They just take out the entire family?
Every man, woman, and child, animal, everything, like haram. They're going to desecrate it and blot it off the face of the earth. They are devotees, bro. Christians are embarrassingly soft. 99% of the time. I love being in the body of Messiah, but I hated the weakness that I saw therein. I did not want to go and join his kingdom because his people were soft, weak cowards that were scared of demons. You gotta be kidding me. Like bottom rung of the ladder, bro. This is like entry level crap. This is nothing. There is power that is so much mightier. When I saw the dragon in his form, he was like a god. Beautiful. A form of purity. Unimaginably lovely, but very similar to a basilisk lizard, a Nile monitor, and a Gila monster. Like these, he was a blending of kinds. He was looked like the origin point for all reptiles, like all serpents, lizards. Like he had features that were attributable to each of them. And when he was in that chamber, when I saw him, I was consumed with lust. Like I wanted two things I coveted. I coveted his fangs and I coveted his armor because he had massive fangs. And I love fangs. They're just so incredible. You can effectively deliver a toxin discreetly where somebody cannot see what is contained therein. Like you don't know what's in a snake's mouth when you see it on the side of the road. Like that feeling you get when you see a snake suddenly appear in front of you and that trepidation where you're like, I don't know, is it venomous? Is it not? Good question. But it keeps its weapons concealed. That was the form of warfare that I learned was the way of the fang. And so when I saw his fangs exposed, they were dripping like continually, like a gaboon viper, just so much venom coming out of these things, like they couldn't turn off. And it was this like gold yellow fluid that was coming out of it. And there was a guy who physically carried around a bull and was collecting that venom, collecting it and storing it. But when he spoke with such a like a lyrical psalmist, like beautiful melody as he talked, but I could not hear what he was saying because I couldn't look over his armor. He had plate armor, very similar. The closest I've found in mankind is ceramic heat shield tiles, like hexagonal heat shield tiles that were completely clear when he wanted them to be, but they individually moved all over his body. He could orient them and bend light. You know, like a scarab beetle can bend light and make you think you're seeing different colors of the background, but it's not changing the color. Different than a chameleon. But it was like digital televisions, you know, like he could project what was behind him perfectly to where I was moving. It was a perfect camouflage. And I was an assassin. I loved killing people silently and in discretion. That to me was the ultimate two tools I needed. Suit of invisibility and a weapon to deliver perfect poison. So I just lusted for those two things. And those are the things that I wanted. I wanted to pursue that the rest of my life. I'll serve you as long as you will give me your armor and give me that venom. You know, I met another assassin who was part of the Finders Club, and he had a sword, a short sword that was a fang of a dragon. And I was like, that's the greatest weapon ever. You got it with you. You got an injectable way of killing people with a toxin that is not readily known by man, and it's untraceable. And I was just like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. That super perverse. I get it. Mind totally corrupt, whatever. But like, I really wanted those two things. I wanted those things, and those were the hooks and the snares that he came to me as. I think he can present himself as anything he wants.
He knew what your buttons were.
He knew my buttons so good. Yeah. Bro, he pushed them good and long, and he milked me. You know what I'm saying? Like, he milked me until my 20s. Like, that sucks. That's embarrassing all the way into my marriage. You know, like these cowards used me as a slave. Even after I was married, they didn't leave me alone. Like, This would have been a very different war if they had not come into my bed and brought this filth back to my house. Big mistake. You know, I got a lot more on the line now than I did then. At that time, I would have just killed all the people on my list and moved on, and we could have settled debts that way. But now I'm going to do it a totally different way. I'm going to fight the way that he tells me to fight from his scriptures, because the word of Yahuwah is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing through, dividing the soul and the spirit, the bone and the marrow, the joints. It is the discerner of the thoughts and the intentions of the hearts of man. Every creature is laid bare, naked before it. I serve him because he gave me clear instructions. Yahuwah Elohim Sevaot, the Lord God Almighty. He said, do this and live. You do this and you die. He said, if you try to preserve your life on this earth, you're going to lose it. But if you give up everything, you give up the inheritance, you give up your mother, your father, your family, your lands for my name's sake. Yeshua's like, Luke 18, I'll give it back to you in this life and in the age to come more than you could even imagine. I took these words as promises that were not deceptive, that weren't pushing my buttons. It's like simple. Like these things are sitting on shelves.
Yes.
Plainly, openly, not occulted, not encrypted.
Yep.
You know, like these perverts read in backwards Latin that's written in a mirror like psychopaths because they're ashamed. They're ruled by their god Leviathan because they're filled with pride and they want to keep it a secret. And it's just cowards. These are all freaking cowards from the top of the pyramid to the bottom. Every one of these people are nothing but a coward. They fear death. They're filled with the fear of death, and they're trying to prolong their judgment. Judgment's coming, and he has a name. He is coming riding on a white horse, eyes full of fire, and he will consume them with the breath of his mouth. And I want to bathe in their blood when they finally reap what they've sown.
Man, you got that warrior spirit. I love it. I love it. Okay, so you brought up something that I think we hit on a previous episode, but we might want to just hit on it just as briefly as possible.
Not a lot of brief with me.
Yeah, well, which is great.
We got long form here, bro.
Yeah,
Let's go.
I mean, podcasting. So you brought up the fact that they crawled into the bed, and I have an idea of what you're talking about on how they basically overstepped. But if somebody's listening right now, they don't know what that means. Like, we can touch on that. But I also, and Jack, this might require you to help me remember. Maybe you remember, but I distinctly remember you saying something about speech, and I was like, good thing we have the headphones here because we're going to listen to some. Do you have
about how they affect technology and speak through technology?
That's what it was.
We can go there.
So I want to go bed first, and then we'll go through speak through technology. Because just yesterday we released an episode. Me and Vicky Joy Anderson, love her dearly, dear friend of mine. She and I talked about dream hacking, and I was going on some rant. I didn't even listen to the whole clip. I had so many people tagging me yesterday, and finally last night, like, I don't know, midnight, I finally hear it, and I'm ranting about something, what or another, and you hear this voice come through, and it seems to be pretty intentional. And I wouldn't mind your perspective on it before we move past that whole thing. But let's jump into, first off, the overstepping that they did. They were operating underneath, this is what we do, and we are going to, pull the strings. But the equation had changed for you, and you had something else that you were living for that made you do. Basically, you pulled the wild card out. I don't think they were expecting that either. But if you could just explain to people what it was that kind of triggered you to kind of fight back with the word and not do what they, because you said, like, if it was under other circumstances, I would have just ran through the list, done, move on. But that was no longer the case.
It's still not easy not to think about that a lot. Because I still can see what they're doing. I still have many eyes and ears out there of people who did not step out, but are loyal to a different covenant, but they've been ordered to stay behind enemy lines
Mm.
and be spies inside the house. I know what they're still doing, and it's disgusting. Pride blinds people. That's the spirit of Leviathan. These are all the Satan. This is why they try to take someone's name and yoke it to these other gods, to these other entities, and bring you into their dominion, because we have what they can't ever receive, which is mercy. We have repentance as a weapon, and they are confounded by it. They are confused by love. Like they're sincerely confused. You know, like you ever been dumbfounded?
Mm-hmm.
That's a real thing where you're like, I'm kind of struck dumb right now. I feel stupid. What the heck is that? You've encountered something that was so far out your paradigm that you don't have a category for where to put it. Love is that for them. Unadulterated love is toxic to them because it's like someone throwing a smoke grenade into a very tiny room. It's going to obfuscate their optics. What was happening with me by being married to Chelsea was that someone was beginning to open the door of that confusion and flood my inner world with love that was authentic. Her presence in my life was an anchor point to what is otherwise, I'm a freaking walking hurricane, man. Like I'm a force of unbelievable amounts of chaos when I want to be. I throw confusion all around me when I want to disappear. And when I want to burn bridges, I'm going to cause massive explosions in people's lives all around me so I can disappear when everyone's trying to sort out the mess. That's like, to me, I'm more comfortable in the violent home like you described, being raised in. Like that's home to me. If there's not fights going on in my house, like right now, present tense, like I'm going to stir up something. I'm bored all the time unless I'm fighting. You know, which is really toxic in a marriage. It sucks.
Sure.
There's a super big problem there on the end of that chain. Ask my children. It sucks. I'm like quite chaotic at times. But I as I was driving here today, because I was wrestling with this again, because there's some physical information that I know about events that are taking place and people that are about to be eliminated who ought not die. And it's, to me, feels like it's in my power to save them, to intercede, to intervene. And I want to badly save my brothers. I have brothers of the blade who bear my mark, who are biologically my family, who are being hunted down and exterminated because of what I'm doing here. Or that's what they're trying to convince me of. But I want to go to their aid. I want to defend them. I want to save them. And I can't. I can't fight that way anymore. And I have to be so careful to not step outside of what Yahuwah has called me to do. Because if I pick up these, if I go back, man, and I start picking up these tools again, and I start laying waste to their empire that way, you're in their camp again, and you're under their dominion, and then they can do whatever the frick they want to you.
Makes sense.
And my wife is very careful to lovingly encourage me, don't go back. Like, he ransomed you out. He bought you out with a great price. The blood of the Lamb ransomed you out, purchased you, and gave you deliverance. Don't go back. You know, there was a council meeting that was up in the Appalachian Mountains that I wanted to go to so freaking bad. And I just, I was going to go and I wasn't going to tell her, you know? Because I want to save my brothers. I want to tell them my testimony. I want to tell them about the deliverance that's available to them. And I want to rebuke these dragons. And I got some hemp pants in the mail that day. Super nice. Super nice. I'm an all natural kind of guy. And I've been on a wait list for these hemp pants for like 18 months, and they showed up that day. And I was like, Jabooyah. And they're made for like martial arts kind of stuff.
Oh, so you're like, this is a sign.
I was like, bro, you know what? And they wear black. I never wear black unless I do
the work.
Bad day. No, I wear midnight blue. It's a way better color in total darkness. Trust me.
Okay.
Tuck that away, bro.
Trusted.
It's a pearl. It's a pearl.
You and I still need to go wander around the woods
yeah,
one
we
time.
do. Yeah, we
do.
Yeah,
buddy.
Let's go to the Devil's
We'll
Courthouse.
talk about that after we're done recording.
But I got these pants on and I was like limber as a weasel. I felt fantastic. And I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. It's so dang hard that people can't make hemp pants. Because I love linen, bro. I love it. I'm a linenite. We started becoming a linenite. Super other level linenites, right? Linenites, right? Linothorax armor. I'm going to make body armor out of linen. It's savage. I love it. But it's prone to prickles. It hates thorns. It's just savage on briars. You're going to lose. And it's just not tough in the wilderness. You know, that's why the buckskin's here, because I'm diving into the forest looking for this stuff today. But that pants invigorated my soul with piss and vinegar. And I was like, let's go for it, son. So I was trying to show my children that I could sidekick savagely with these pants on, right? In the living room, because, you know, I still like my wife and I still got it, honey.
Yeah.
Watch me throw this beautiful kid. Watch me, you know, like a third grader showing off to the girls in class. And so I had this office chair like this, but it's leather. And I was like, I'm going to kick that chair so hard, I'll send it across the room. Be like, prance like a peacock, you know? And so I threw a testing kick at it and was like, that felt so good. And then there was this still calm voice in the back of my head that was like, don't kick the chair. Should have listened. But I kicked that chair, dude, as hard as I possibly could. And there was a frame piece inside the cushion. And it hit the top of my foot and just wrecked the top of my foot. Like thought I broke my foot. And I was all trying to act cool and not like I was an idiot. And I was like, I
all
could
part
not
of the plan.
walk. All part of the plan. And Chelsea's like, oh, that hurt. I just limped to the bathroom. She's like, oh, that hurt so bad. So that was the night. This is June 6th. I'll just tell you guys, that's the anniversaries for the Jasons. 06, 06, 06. That's when Jasons were conceived, many of them.
Okay.
And that's a night where they have lots of activation and lots of assignments for hunting and killing and espionage, all this stuff, because they're in universities and they're in politics. They're all over the place. You know, they're garbage men too. You know, they're all over.
And keep your thought. I just want to clarify for the audience. Anybody listening,
I'm talking to you.
When you're talking about the Jasons. We covered it on
secret scientific group.
I think
we got to hit on this.
Jason Bourne's not fictionary, so like
that's a thing. Yeah.
It's a real thing. We hit it on one of the previous episodes. We don't even go down there. I just wanted to clarify for people.
There's a subset. There's a much bigger subset of the Jasons, which is children of Jasons. They call it the Junior Jason Project. And it's in the hundreds of thousands in schools now where they have infected themselves. Robert Ballard, former naval intelligence, father admirals, military intelligence, and have built out a programming system, a finders club, and to yoke children with handlers, manipulators, send them through behavioral operant conditioning systems, bring out spies who don't know they're spies. And what happened was I started getting introduced into this scientific community of parents. It wasn't like guys in suits and stuff like that. It was like dads at luncheons and barbecues and stuff like that. You just start like meeting. And they are part of what's called the Jason projects. And the Jason program is a scientific committee that is a advisory group. Basically, they're consultants. That's how they bridge themselves. There are some intellectuals, you would call them, or guys that come out of universities, and they were recruited in during the Cold War. And their goal was to deal with all these nuclear weapons secrets. And what are we going to do with contending in the Cold War? And so they would come to them, the United States Navy, the Army, whoever would come to them and ask them to fix a problem for them. And they would pool these mental resources together, and they would meet a few times a year and discuss all these issues. Super top secret, right? Above top secret. Anyways, they started this program in Southern California. And this is where my family had all these connections through the child trafficking organizations that were down there. And they started getting connected to this scientific group. Well, when you show a certain level of accolades, when you do personality testings, they start really early on in these families. They start trying to figure out exactly what cranks your gears. When you start popping up on certain algorithms, they're going to start to push you into different fields. And so my family chose for me the field of military intelligence and military espionage, counter-espionage. And that's what, to me, I liked it. And I wanted to do that. And so I got introduced to these people that would become my handlers. And that was part of what's called the Junior Jason Project, which is something you can look up online today. That's a project that now tens of millions of children have been through. They may not understand what it's for, but they pair these super elite specialized teachers with children and give them a custom catered education that gives them access to a totally different realm of normal schooling to what children have versus others don't. From that, they have finders inside there to recruit children into the family or into one of these interagencies. Like this is what NASA recruits from a 9-year-old child. That's a genius. You know, they're like, we want them to be ours. So then they give them a tutor, a mentor, a handler who's going to cultivate them to be in these industries throughout their life. And so this is how a lot of these companies, you'll see all of them, Exxon, Mobil, Apple, Facebook, they all send They're trained agents to find headhunters into this child organization to try to find them. And so this is public knowledge. This isn't like woo-woo scary conspiracy level stuff. This is like the reality of how the world finds good managers level people, and then they want to find CEOs, and then they want to find board of directors. This is how they build them out. They start them in childhood. That's junior Jason's. That's what I was rocked up in. But that's the stuff that's going on in amusement parks, and people are like, oh yeah, take my children to Disneyland. Don't freaking touch that filth, you guys. Different kingdom. Super real, deadly stuff in there. Anyways, that was the anniversary for the Jasons, like my birthday. You know, my children celebrate that as a birthday because for a personality in me, that was my birthday. That's the first time I got to assimilate into life, was on that day. That's awkward to explain to people. Normies don't like that stuff. Anyways, complex human. That night, we saw her parents. They were visiting. It was great, but I couldn't freaking walk hardly well. And I was like, dadgummit, because in the back of my head, I'm like, I got to go meet with them. I got to go to the council. I got to go. I want my blades back. I want to go hunt. Let's just being honest, dude. It sounds terrible to say out loud. Whatever.
Welcome to the table.
Oh, freak. But there's gonna be some consequences for some of these conversations. You know, there's stuff that happens after this ends that's just it sucks. But I went home that night, and Chelsea was like, "Why don't you just talk to me?" You know, because I was obviously a lot more of me was around than normal. You know, I was a lot more chatty. And that we used to have this thing in marriage, BC days. You remember that, before children days? Couples remember this with hardly belonging because the sleep debt gets so real and it's just a vapor in the wind at this point.
Right now, it's an idea that existed at some point.
That time. You remember when you used to have that with your wife and you guys could just, you know, you weren't co-sleeping. You could just wherever in the house, just be rowdy and rambunctiously in love.
My routine.
That stuff. But we lost a lot of our talking time, her and I, since the chronic illness, since twin babies, moving constantly, you know. And I literally was laying there trying to ice my foot, trying to like get myself ready to go. I'm like, looking, I got to be there by 3:30. Like, I'm trying to count my hours. And she talked to me, and I just got to talk about all this stuff I never get to talk to otherwise, and just pour out stuff I've never told anyone, and recognize this woman in my life is an anchor for my soul, because there's still stuff in me that wants to go cause chaos. There's still stuff in me that wants to burn the earth to freaking ashes vehemently. And I have to surrender to a different kingdom. And the Father gave me the gift of a wife to help me be anchored in the right system of man, the right kingdom. And you know what? She is such a gift to me. And my father, back when we were early married on, moved into our house. I was a slave. He asked, I said yes. He moved into the basement of our house, and he began to draw back Jason that out of me. And with it, Nathan and Blade and all these other parts of me that he wanted to use and weaponize, because the finders had a prophecy dictated to them with my name on it. These people are serious about their business. If you're called back, they're going to hunt you back in. And so when he came to our house, he began to teach people a couple of things that he did too. One of them is really important. He wanted me to go to a doctor, a general practitioner, and get on a drug called New Vigil. You ever heard of this? Provigil, so. Any of these things?
Doesn't sound familiar. Okay.
But he coached me on basically what I needed to tell the doctor, because he's like, we're going to be keeping you awake day and night because you're going to be working for us. We got to keep this secret. So we're going to put you on a drug called New Vigil, and you're going to tell him you have shift sleep disorder. Go to the doctor. He's going to prescribe you this drug. You're going to take this. It'll allow you to operate at 100% effectiveness with days without sleep.
That's where I heard it from last time we were talking. That's what you told me about this medicine.
Yes. So there's people. This is a family formulated compounds, stuff that comes from the biological excretions of humans are used to make this drug.
Okay.
So it's their family business. My family profits off that. That drug though, unlocked, bypassed the gates and the safeguards that have been built into my system to try to get these other parts of my personality to present themselves so that they could access the information, like a walking vault of secrets. They want the classified secrets for a lot of the locations of their dumps. That's what my dad wants. Super corrupt individual. He wants to weaponize it. That was what he was trying to access. The man he sent to bring that out of me, we call him TikTok with the clock. He's a hypnotist. And he climbed into the bed with me when my wife was gone and put a large clock next to my ear and began to whisper into my ears programming phrases that had been put in there when I was a child. And so while I was asleep, I began to hear him in my dreams, in my mind. And when I came to consciousness, it was as if I was back in my memories from when I was created as a boy, as a 9-year-old. And I was then divulging all the information of what he wanted to find out about. That crossed the line. Because when I came to consciousness after that, pouring sweat, blood coming out of both of my nostrils, my eyes were burning like I'd been held open and chemically held open for hours. I was filled with rage and wanted vengeance because I know who that man is. And I know where he sleeps at night. And I know where his family lives. And that's real easy to burn. That's what hemlock's for. Or monk's hood. So that's the line they crossed.
And I mean, I don't remember the TikTok part of this.
I've never shared that ever publicly.
Okay, so all right. Which just triggered a line of thought in my mind because everything has reason, purpose, naming, all that stuff. And the idea of the hypnotist, the TikTok, it makes you wonder about the whole TikTok app, you know?
It was strange when I saw that name pop up as the name for a platform or Meta. My wife had a dream about Meta's being the name with an Ouroboros years and years and years ago.
It's really interesting. Like so the app TikTok was purchased years ago, but it used to be called Musically. And it was it was an app where kids did stupid music dances. It was back when I first started the podcast, and I was doing a lot. Are you familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk?
No.
He's like an entrepreneurial type guy. He's very vulgar, but he's just like, just do it, man. Just do it. Just go and do it. And so I was like in my truck, driving a truck, trying to build a podcast. I'm like, yes, just do it, you know? But he would talk about this Musically app. And he's like, it's social media. Just get on it and do it. I'm like, I'm 30 something years old. I don't want to go on Musically, but I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I made some kind of video. I didn't dance though. I was just in my truck and there was a music thing. I don't know what it was. Anyways.
Somebody find that video. Challenge accepted.
It's not embarrassing.
I know, but it'd still be fun. It's an origins point. Should be on the wall.
I could probably find it.
It's like your first $1 bill. You know, like put it on the wall, bro. Humble beginnings are good for us.
Yeah. I bet I posted it. I bet I could find it somewhere. If I can find it, I'll put it. I'll put it on the wall. I'm not. It'd be worth it. No shame in my game. But then that thing just like faded away. Whether it was actually a thing or I just didn't care about it. But this new app comes out, TikTok, and I find out that it used to be Musically and it was purchased. And now what you're saying, it just makes me like, I wonder if there is a connection. I don't know, maybe not, but like, what's the point of this TikTok app being called TikTok? Why is it called TikTok? But when you consider this man being called TikTok and him being a hypnotist, well, what does TikTok do? Dude,
perfectly.
It hypnotizes
perfectly.
People. The way you scroll, the idea of doom scrolling, I mean, it's not, I wanted to preface this with saying, I don't want to say it's weird in the sense that like, I think you're weird if you do this. It was weird and foreign to me because all I knew with TikTok was it used to be Musically, and that's where kids hung out. But this TikTok idea that these grown adults were openly saying how they go on TikTok and they'll be lost for hours. That's hypnotism.
Yeah.
You're gone. You're zoned out. It's taken over your consciousness. And before you know it, hours goes by and you have accomplished nothing. It really, I really find that interesting.
Who's the timekeeper? Remember? Who's the guardian of time? The dragon. He's there to steal your time. This is his kingdom.
Oof.
And why does he reward and bless some technology groups and destroy and just into oblivion others? He is a time bandit. Principal measure. because what you give your time to is what you worship. We don't use this language anymore because our pastors were neutered by finders infiltrating their ranks and teaching them the doctrines of demons rather than the authority and the commandments of the Most High. We don't understand why they're stealing our time, because the currency of the future is attention, period. It won't be dollar bills. It will be minutes, seconds, that's going to be the currency of their kingdom going forward. Whoever can capture the imagination, Walt Disney's motto, capturing the imagination, like you just described so well articulated, that world, that universe that you can escape to for 2.5 hours of awesome Black Mirror staring and gazing.
Yes.
In trance, the virtual augmented realities that will soon be given into people. That doctrine, that ideology, that dominion is their offer to the masses. It's going to be delicious. It's going to be pushing their buttons, because all while they're doom scrolling, something's occupying them. Something's learning about them and building a database of that person to custom cater the offer when it comes. They're incredible intelligence agency. Like they are formidably capable. But they hold nothing in pale to omniscience, omnipresence, and the author of heaven and earth. Their dad, their father, created them. They are not eternal ones. They are immortals, and they're going to have an end date. They have nothing that holds a candle to the power and the presence of the Holy Spirit, Yahweh Elohim, our creator, and his son, Yeshua of Nazareth. The devil, bro, in his own books, you want to talk about reading crazy, cryptic, nasty stuff? In his own writings, he commanded them when he was ascending into the sky. He commanded the priests, pray. The devil, Ra, right? Ra, that's his incarnation at the time. Zeus is who he's identified in the Bible, the throne of Zeus. That's what Barack Obama stood on in Denver when he was like, the throne of Pergamum, under the white horse, when he was enthroned there. That's the devil's play place. I'm trying to tell people, it's Capital New World Order, giving you all the heads up I can, right? Direct fire. Seriously. But that throne of Zeus, he literally sat on it and he commanded his priests to tell his worshipers to pray for protection for him from the two gods of the east. Why is the devil scared of two gods from the east? Who are those gods? Well, I know the story of this prophesied one who would come. He would come from the east. What did the wise men, Daniel's descendants who were carrying the riches of Babylon back to him, what did they say? We're seeking the king of the Jews. We're seeking a sign from the east. Like, that's the son of righteousness who rose with healing in his wings. That is the heavenly host who he treads and fears. Every time he's fought Michael, he's lost. He tried to fight Michael for the body of Moses, like it says in the book of Jude. He lost.
Yep.
He's tried to fight. He's going to fight again. They're going to have another rebellion, and he's going to be cast down to the earth. Like, he fears Yeshua terribly. And so his priests are down here cutting themselves, ripping babies apart, sacrificing everything they have to try to build up walls of protection for him to hold up his little city in the sky. He's going to fall, man, and he's going to come down with a great crash, and with violence, he's going to execute his will on the earth because he knows his days are short, man. He's going to lose. He's a defeated enemy. It should give people hope.
Absolutely. Man, like, I'm telling you, dude, like you say things and you take my mind down all these rabbit holes. And I feel like we went from TikTok to that. And I was just like, how did we get there? But it's beautiful. You know what I mean? Because my thing is, I am very big on how can we find the redemption angle in a lot of things. Yes, the world is evil. There's a lot of bad in the world, but how can we find that redemption?
Redeem the time because the days are evil.
Redeem the time because the days are evil. Yeah. Let's dive into some audio, shall we?
Jack's like,
Jack's over here laughing.
It's just a turn.
Let's take this.
No, you need a hard time. Like, he's like, I don't know what to say. Well, that was awesome.
I literally brought it up like, I don't know, 30 minutes ago. And if I don't make that hard left, we're just gonna do something else. Cause like I was like, all right, so talk to me about this pathway that you found down a tunnel system somewhere where you were talking to Apollo. Remember that time? He's like, oh yeah, of course I remember that time. And it's like 30 minutes later. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about metamaterials.
Yeah, it's crazy that you say that because I see,
just wait.
All right, just keep it there.
Just keep it there. These are going to be our placeholders for the conversations. We're going to have to circle back to meta materials.
Where's my notes here? I have where's it at? We have.
It's going to get rowdy.
I had some notes. It's a good thing I'm not going by them because I can't even find them.
Pen and paper, bro.
I know, right? Well, the thing is, I don't understand what I write half the time. Let's see here.
You wanted to talk about how the dragon speaks through technology?
Well, yeah,
you want to do that?
Totally, yeah. Because I got sidetracked. I was just trying to find my note. I have meta materials in my
My mind is 40,000 spider webs. They're all floating in there at the same time.
Let's put on some headphones and see where this journey takes us.
Are you going to play Dragon Audio? Do you need? I can play it for you if you want.
Let me. Gosh, you're going to sidetrack me again. He's going to sidetrack me again.
We'll pick that up another episode.
There we go. Please.
I'll bring it with me because it's only hard copied.
Are you talking about? I don't have ears on me.
I know. Yeah, you both don't. I don't think.
So are you talking about like actual Dragon Audio, like the Dragon, not like
him speaking,
like not that, like
him speaking.
Okay. Yep, we're gonna need to do that.
Revelation 12.
Can you hear me in there?
Nope, can't hear a thing.
Okay,
I'm just existing in an echo chamber.
Maybe his headphones aren't plugged in. Maybe.
Can you hear anything now?
Testing 1 2.
I can't hear a thing.
Testing.
I'm plugged in all the way to that point, but not there.
This is all going to get cut out.
I know. It's okay. It's cute.
Unless Jack figures it up. There we go. Something.
Oh, yes.
You hear yourself?
Wow. I sound great. You sound amazing, bro.
Thank you, man.
This sounds so much better.
This is what I told you.
This makes me sound better than I do in real life. I know it. This thing is sorcery.
Like that.
This sure is the best.
Giving up the headphones during these interviews was hard because of that, but
nice.
It's more fun not having the headphones on, but this is so buttery. I love it. all that just
that's staying in.
Jack, all that everything that just happened, just keep it in. This is raw and authentic. Give me some more juice in my headphones because I'm deaf. Oh yeah, now that's what I'm talking about. All right, so
it's a completely different experience now. I'll be real honest.
We'll take them off at some point.
No, it's okay. I'm sweating already.
But I definitely
a lot of artificial fabric on my face.
I love it. So we have, I just kind of touched on it earlier, but we had an interview that came out yesterday about hijacking dreams and how there's an actual agenda about that. And there's technology that is being developed, has been developed, that they are using to infiltrate people's dreams. One is called REM space. And to be honest with you, full transparency, I would interview the owner of that company if he said yes. I've reached out. He hasn't responded. I don't know if he hasn't seen my messages, but I would interview him because I don't want to say bones to pick, but I have questions, because the whole motivation behind him creating the company was him as a teenager, I think 16, having experiences with lucid dreams and wanting to tap into that. I don't think it's an accident. And through the conversation with you, the motivation behind it may not even be coming from him. And so there's that, but there's other companies that are developing technologies to hack people's dreams. And this whole interview was going that direction, and Jack has everything preset, I'm assuming, but the audio, I only heard a little clip, so maybe Jack has a little bit more for context purpose, but I know I was ranting just by the tone of my voice. I was going on one of the Tony rants, and there is a voice that comes through. And Jack said to me last night when I texted him about this, he's like, I don't remember ever hearing that during the editing. So somehow this has happened between the editing and the release. So like he exports it, he uploads it, it releases, and somehow that gets put on the audio. Very bizarre. So let's take a listen, Jack.
Okay, so this is with context, just so you guys are aware. I also have an ISO version of just the voice, and then I have it slowed down as well. So I can play all three of those when you're ready.
Yeah, give us full speed first.
Okay.
But, Lindsey Graham, Hillary Clinton, they can't extract the data, but these entities can. And because you don't believe that these entities exist, because you don't believe that the other realm exists, you don't believe that these entities are actually operating and warring for your soul in the other realm continually 24/7, because you don't believe you're a supernatural being living a spiritual existence, you will never come to the conclusion that entities are extracting your brain data, going around the checkbox loophole, and giving it to nefarious people in this realm. Did I paint the picture enough? I don't know. So before you go any further, your eyes said it all. I mean, go ahead and just say whatever you're thinking.
It sounds like a demon specifically, not the tongue of Nahash, but a demon trying to sow fear.
Mm-hmm.
My first encounter with experiencing this kind of stuff, where basic recordings are augmented after they're recorded, was very similar to this. One of my friends, his name was Chris, who was hosting a conference called Take on the World. This was back in 2018. I had just written my book. I hadn't published it yet. And I was doing a tour with Tom Dunn to all these sites of where all this stuff happened down in Arizona to document it before they burned it. I got a text from him. Said I was supposed to speak at that conference. That was going to be my first time going on stage, publishing my book, coming out, swinging, bro. He sends me a video over text messages. That's him filming himself doing a question and answer with somebody else about Revelation 12, and it's specifically at a point where he was recording this conversation. Everything was normal in his audio, and then when he went to listen to it later, there was a second audio track that cut him off as he talked about fire comes down out of heaven and destroys the beast in his army. Right then, his track cut off. His video was still there of him, but almost in slow motion. And there was a separate track of Nahash, of the dragon, speaking. And it freaked him out terribly, because like what you and I just felt as you're hearing that conjuring of a spirit is disgusting. It's disgusting. You're hearing behind their veil, and it's confusion and it's chaos. He sends it to me over a text, and it's 12 gigabytes when I open it, which is impossible over a text.
That's ridiculous.
But when he sends it, it looks like a short clip, just a couple of 30-second clip. But when I open it, it's many, many minutes long. And it's literally the Nahash threatening, like literally railing accusations that he is going to win in that battle, that he is going to destroy the one who comes to contend. Like, it is him proclaiming the opposite prophecy against that and threatening not just Chris, but all of those who are trying to be a resistance to his army. That's what's in that clip. And that was the first time I was shaking uncontrollably when I first saw it, because he said it was creepy. I don't know what creepy means to him. I got a different level of creep. And when I heard that, I just started shaking uncontrollably, because I've not heard that father's voice in a long time. Terrified me, because I knew it was a threat. I knew what I was on the precipice of doing was destruction against his house. And he was warning me, don't. And I went there. And I shared my first ever time on a stage there, and I played a segment of that clip so people could understand this is what we're dealing with. This technology that you and I are using and don't think a whole lot of is a form of sorcery. At its roots and foundations, the means of communing with other realms, other entities through the air is a divine right that was practiced through ritual magic, incantation, prayer, meditation, through all these other means, up until the time came when these demons specifically began to teach mankind how to make devices to talk to them. The first images ever used on like a television screen that you and I think of today were the Knights Templar's cross. They were literally channeling these spirits to give them technology to help them have access to their realm. But it was a two-way street, and they were being manipulated because there's obviously levers to pull on somebody to make them give them what you want. They wanted a form of technology. Most of the time it's military or it's for financial gain. And that exchange is what has progressively been building this technology that we have. This is the interface communications platform that these entities now use to get their voice in. And it started right away from the beginning. You can backplay music and hear speech. Even when people are normal, singing gospel, Christian song, you will still hear other speech coming in backwards. And it's not always demonic sounding, it's not always evil. But when you start playing some of this music backwards, you'll find this artifacts of this phenomenon going on all over the place. This technology, like there was a technology company that I was doing security for, and they were getting their data storage devices, petabytes of data storage, huge. That's the beast currency for them. It's going to be data storage. That They got the design plans from lucid dreaming and from talking to aliens, entities that came and visited them, that showed them and it helped them crack problems they were having. They were doing ritual, not the same kind of voodoo creepy stuff that people would think of, but they were communing with them under a man who was much more the handler of this group, who was an adept in these organizations. And he was teaching them, oh, here's how you can take this psilocybin mushroom. Here's how you can take these different compound supplements. And here's how you structure yourself with fasting and with sleep deprivation. And so that you will have these interactions. That was where their technology for this data storage had its origin points. But that's just one little tiny drop in a big bucket of the story of the chain of custody for where much of our technology has come from. CERN, there's a reason CERN is the developers of the internet you and I are using to communicate to people all over the world. They sit on top of they sit under the temple of Apollo. Their job is to unlock that gate. They want to bring him out and to raise their destroyer to the earth. That is their agenda. They developed the technology that you and I are using now and gave it to people, but long ways down the line. The military, by the time they're done with the technology, it's 40 years after the fact, then they're going to give you wristwatch AI computers. I saw them in 2006.
Really?
You know, this stuff they give to us is their leftovers. It's the microwave oven after they're done building microwave weapons and nuking people with them.
Yeah. Once it's irrelevant and not usable on their end, that's when they give it to you.
When they have something far beyond this.
Yeah. So you mentioned before we hit that recording, and then you just mentioned this. Are you referring to that recording that you were talking about? Is that the recording that you're referring to before, or are we talking about you have two different recordings?
I have three.
You have three recordings with them talking.
The other ones were when I spoke at conferences.
Really?
When in Canada, when I spoke at a conference.
Did other people hear it, or was it just caught on the recording?
It was on the recording. So I spoke at a conference in Canada called I think it's called Quest for Truth. Oh no. Dying to Save a Life is the name of the video on my YouTube channel. You can watch that talk. But when I filmed it, I had two cameras. I've had to learn how to do 2 or 3 of everything now since then. But when I filmed it on my phone and on a standalone camera. And when I looked at it on my phone after the conference ended there in Canada, it was completely normal. I watched it. But when I got on the airplane and began to watch it as I was flying back home, it was 6 hours long. And I'd given like a 40-ish minute speech. And I was like, what the heck? And when I got to a part where I was specifically talking about Revelation 19, when I was starting to hit on the judgments of the dragon and talking about that, my whole video goes into slow motion in my video. And underneath is a completely different audio. And it sounds like the dragon from the tunnel, but as if he had chains attached to him. And as he's moving, these chains are dragging behind him. As it genuinely sounds like he's in a prison cell. It sounds like he's in a prison cell or in a chamber, like he was when he saw me last, you know? Yeah. And it was just threats and violence and reviling, just enraged, like utter betrayal, warning me, I am going to gut you for what you've done. Just violence. And he fulfilled that, man. I nearly died not a month later. It was almost punched my ticket.
Yeah, but he didn't fulfill it the way he wants to fulfill it.
No, right? But I still have 5 holes in my stomach from where I got wrecked with hernias that have never been fixed. My spine is still crooked. I still can't walk and stand upright. You know, I'm still pretty freaking damaged goods. You know?
Yeah, but you could still turn to him and just give him like the old Give him the Trump. Wrong.
Still
Man.
scary, bro.
No, I believe it.
It's a lot harder when you've seen these people face to face. When you've like these are not small things to trifle with.
And that's something that I've
not seen my creator face to face. You understand? I've physically witnessed the fallen a lot. I've not seen the face of my redeemer. It's a lot easier to believe they exist when they're threatening you to your face. It's a lot easier to have faith when you've seen them. But blessed is the one who believes even if he hasn't seen.
Yeah. Wild stuff. I've been in this like last year, just been this educational state of existence. And I realized that by releasing the episodes, which I don't regret, by the way, and even the vocalization we just heard, we'll go back into that in a second. But like, no fear, right?
That's in the episode that you published.
Yeah, it's on there. Everybody's heard it.
Dang.
I had no idea it was there until people were just tagging left and right. And usually, I said this before on the show, but like, if it's one or two people that say something like, you're probably hearing things. When I have dozens, I'm like, maybe I should listen to that.
Probably go back and check that episode out and see what happened in there.
And yesterday was a very busy day. A lot of stuff at home with the wife and stuff. And I was like, I'll get around to it. And I forgot until I hopped on X and I saw, I was tagged and somebody screen recorded. So I was just hit play and I was like, dang, that's interesting. But I've realized that part of spiritual warfare and things like that is when you're operating in the call that you're called to do. My calling is different than yours. Yours is different from the next person. I'm being called to expose these things through this venue. By doing that, though, you're poking these things in the eye. You're poking them. You're poking them.
You're draining their battery.
That's a great way to view it.
They don't like that.
And I've noticed.
And eventually they'll die. Like they will run out of juice, bro.
I've noticed.
They'll be left wandering the desert.
Okay. So you're really giving me like the imagery that I need to understand,
Yeah. Pull their plugs, bro. Keep going.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like if I've been commissioned to do by the Almighty, I don't fear the ones he's commissioning me to go against. It's just the way it is. I'm backed by God,
The enemy fire is always strongest when you're over the most sensitive targets. That's what I looked at that threat as. And so you should look at this similarly.
For sure. Like
lots of enemy aircraft, anti-aircraft fire coming in at us. We got to stay on target. That kind of situation.
Stay the course. So and this, I'll use the example and then we'll go back whenever we get back to the audio. But
there's another one. There's more?
Well, yeah, he wants to kind of play the variation of it. But so Lindsay, when the diagnosis came in with her cancer, I was a mess. Like I had, my heart was broken. And then my natural reaction was, I called people and I said, I think we're going to need to pump the brakes with the podcast and go on cruise control. We're going to just, we're going to do what we need to do to stay afloat. But I don't have the time. I'm not going to have the energy to put into the show. I need to be focused at home. Wrong, because since her diagnosis and coming down, it started before that, but so did the diagnosis. We just didn't know it at the time. Like there's a storm brewing in her, which is, I believe, a spiritual thing for sure. And it's meant to be a distraction and to pull away from what God's doing. There's been this thing brewing that God's been doing and revealing a new chapter of the call to me, like evangelism, preaching. He's surrounding me with pastors that are like showing me like how to do certain things I just don't know how to do. And then the diagnosis comes in. I'm ready to pull the plug and just say, guys, very mid. Let's just, and I even said it on the show. I think when I talked about it to people, when I first announced what was going on, I said, I don't know what this means for the show. The show's not ending, but I don't know how often I'll be around. I even called some people. I talked to two of my friends about stepping in and hosting the show for me for a while. And in the middle of that storm, we just started experiencing an explosion. like an explosion everywhere. Like it's like God was like, I know what you're experiencing, but it's because of what I'm about to do. And we're just like, and I tell everybody the same thing. I don't know if this season that we're in is a temporary season, if it's a short season, or if this is an extended period of time. But right now, as I'm sitting here with you, I think in the last month and a half, the YouTube channel has grown like, I want to say like nearly 50, 60,000 subscribers. Wow. All platforms we have are experiencing growth. And that's just the growth side of things. Like there's the whole spiritual side of things that God's doing. That's clear. Like I literally just had it wasn't a phone call. I got a text message from a former coworker today that I hadn't talked to in a while. And he just kind of poured himself out to me a little bit. He's like, I'm not a religious person. My life is really kind of falling apart. And I sent him like a nearly 20-minute voice memo just on the way in here today, just kind of like pouring into him and trying to share with him like how God has plans for his life. And if he starts stepping into what God created him to be, he's going to find joy and fulfillment that he never could have experienced anywhere else. And his life circumstances built him into this person that he is today, but that's not the image that God had intended for him. And but all these little things been popping up that weren't the most typical. And it's just like, it's clear that God has been really like taking the ship and doing a hard left on certain things. And I think that what we're experiencing in the personal side of thing with Lindsay and stuff, it's been meant to be a distraction. My wife ain't dying.
Hallelujah.
She's not dying.
Hallelujah.
And she's going to be healed. And so like we're not operating in fear. Yeah. And I was just reading yesterday in Mark 8, how it just kind of hit me. I think I texted my pastor like 11:30 at night because I was just like, it just hit me. So like Jesus spits on the blind man's eyes, right? And he can see, but the trees, we talked about that earlier, right? But like the whole thing is like, I said to my pastor, it's almost like Jesus was showing us that healing is a process at times. Could Jesus have healed him right away? Of course. Like he didn't have to move. It's done. How many times the woman who said that her daughter was demon possessed, and he's like, because of your faith, she's good, and like just go back, she's done. He didn't do anything. He's just like, hey, it's done. You're good. But like he showed this idea of like, this man is blind. He can see, but people look like trees. And he puts his hands on again, and he can see it. It's like this healing process. And that's where I'm looking at Lindsay. It's like, listen, this is a healing process we're in. We're in the process right now. At any moment, today, tomorrow, next week, whenever, that process can be over. That's the way I'm looking at it, So anyways, let's talk about some other spooky sounds. Jack, I don't know how I got on that.
Such a beautiful testimony though. But I'll just say, man, there's a tremendous growth and maturity that's happened to you in the last year in particular. You're a very different man than the first time I sat down with you.
I appreciate that.
You really are. You were timid about the gospel at that point in your life, which is, I understand. I was very timid about the gospel for a lot of years of my life. I rarely even read the word out loud on stage or in shows. I was still battling that. But to see suffering has produced a good fruit in you and your wife, and it's produced what's been germinating inside you guys, which is great faith, great boldness. But those are the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Those are the actual things that hang on the tree that allows others to inspect what it is you're doing. What are your real motives? And you being tested in this matter has been such an abounding revelation to everybody else watching that you guys are anchored in a righteous foundation and you are not moving. You're the immovable objects. Yeah. That's a real thing that the enemy encounters that are unstoppable forces. That's what we are all made to be. We're called, in the scriptures, the word is Gibor or Giborim. Like when Gideon's grinding grain in the wine press and the angel of Yahweh comes to him and is like, hey, Gideon, you Gibor, you mighty man of valor. And he's like, say what? Not trained in war. And he's like, I'm going to command you to lead an army and completely eradicate your enemies. You're like, somebody else? I got other brothers, bro. They're better. You got other options out there. And he's like, I want you to tear down your father's idols and burn them with fire. He's like, can I ask my friends to help? He's like, you betcha. He sees us. He sees warrior. He sees his special forces becoming Gibberim. That's like the series that I started many years ago when COVID was launching itself. And I thought, it's go time, baby. Let's teach him everything. Like, let's teach him the way of the blade. Yeah. You know, I'm like, I'm going to teach you guys about bronze weapons and all kinds, and about the Bible, but about bronze weapons too. But that boldness that rises up in men when they're tested, you know, that's evidence of a different kingdom. Because what I see rise up in men who compromise is shame and guilt and bondage and fear. Yeah. That's what comes out of them when they're tested. Mm-hmm. You know, but this is the distinction that is so powerful. The kingdom of righteousness is that when we experience the crushing of the refiner's fire, when we experience the loss of our normal, what we give is fractured parts of ourself to our king to fill up and cleanse and fortify, amalgamate into something that is pure and strong. Because it takes a lot to go from this to this. This is how you get iron. This is hematite. This is an amazing mineral. Lots of other stuff in there too. But to go from this to carpenter tool steel, CTS, XHP, fashioned into a blade, like I took this one from a piece of metal and chunks of wood with Patrick from MT Knives. Amazing knife guy. I always wear his knives. Let's talk knives for a second. We'll get back around to it. The Genesis neck knife. This is one he makes. Freaking beautiful. Sharpest knife you'll ever get in the mail. I love him. I have no sponsorships. I'm not for sale. I just love stuff that I love and I'm evangelize it to the nations. Anyways, I went to his house. I lived in his driveway like a bum, just hoping that he'd teach me how to make a knife. I'd be like,
I'm still here.
I'll clean stuff. Anyways, I've wanted to make this knife for a long time. Long time. But to go from a process where you start with something so basic, so ordinary, and to end up with something so extraordinary is incredibly challenging. Takes a tremendous amount of work, a tremendous amount of time and resources and skill and instruction, because you're going to put this thing through the fire over and over and over again. You're going to grind it away. You're going to change its nature. You're going to alter it to where it's unrecognizable as what it once was. This was a piece of a tree, an olive tree. That's what it was, growing, like this little guy. At some point in its life, that's all it was. And now I live with it on my chest. That's a completely different thing. This little coin that you see inside here was a gift that somebody gave me. That's a widow's mite. Ever hear that story? Where a woman is standing at the temple, makes an offering, and all she gives are these two little mites. It's the smallest copper coin that was in the currency of circulation at the time. That's what these are. These are widow's mites, is what they call them. She gave these tiny little coins into a big chest that would jingle when people put lots of money in there and make everyone, oh my, their tithe is quite prodigious these days. Whereas she gave everything she had, and she gave so much more. Yeah. And you know what? That's what's asked of us. Yeah. He's asking of us to give everything we have to him. He's actually inviting you to give him everything in your life. That's called sovereignty. That's a different requirement. That's not often what's preached to us in the gospel message, but we are inviting him to be the complete ruler of our lives, to where if he says, I'm going to take your family, all of them, I'm going to take everything you have and leave you destitute, will you still follow me? Mm-hmm. That's quite an invitation. Mm-hmm. That's very different than, I'll give you power to kill your enemies. That's pretty easy to sign on that line. Yeah. You know, but his offer is pure. He is the one who can take weak men and wounded women and make them into the most powerful fighting force that's on the earth. And it's amazing to get to see that rising up. The Father's raising up his remnant. Yeah. And it's beautiful to see it coming to take place.
I agree. I see it everywhere too. And like I think I was telling you before we started recording, kind of like the process mentally for me on that whole thing, which was like I knew God called me to do the podcast. I did the podcast, and throughout the entire existence of the podcast, there was no mistake in my mind. I've said it countless times. The only reason why this thing is successful is because God blessed it, because I was an entrepreneur beforehand. I've had several different businesses, and I've failed at all of them. And honestly, I'm failing at this one if it wasn't for the hand of God on it, because like, I'm terrible. That's why I had to hire a manager, because I was like, I don't know what the heck is going on, man. But like, in this process of revelation, when it came to so when I first started the podcast, I didn't have a clear understanding or call as to what my task was, other than start the podcast. And so that's what I did. And we started collecting people's stories, and I'm like, okay. And I'm dealing with social rejection from my local church. You know, and I say social rejection because it's not like they said, stop doing this or you're going to hell or anything like that. It was just this socialization that dwindled. Mm-hmm. And if there was socialization, it was talking about this show, but in a tongue-in-cheek manner. And so I started, like, I was really struggling with, like, I know what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to do, but I don't want to misstep and do something that's going to dishonor God at the same time. And then countless times throughout the show's existence, I felt that way. I felt like, ugh, I think I messed up. And I deal with these battles, these internal battles of, like, did I just jack something up? Is this over? Do I have to pay the piper now? And all this stuff, you know? And I do believe that there are times that I've said things on the show that I regret. But thank God that His grace covers that. And I ask that He just erases those bad things that I've said from people's memory, because even though it's on record, obviously, but, like, it's just like, for instance, one thing that's in my mind is, in the early days, because of my social rejection, I had stopped going to any kind of corporate meeting of the body. Yeah. I was like, I can do this growth myself spiritually. Heck with everybody. Yeah. And that was a mistake. I need the unity. I need the communion. I need the community of people. I didn't believe that it was out there. I didn't believe that people were out there. And I would vocalize such things on the show in the early days, you know, in a sense, like, I really was rough. Yeah. Rightfully so on some things, but I was very bitter towards the church. And so throughout the show's existence, I've come to understand that as much as, we're, Jack, how many episodes are we into? 750 or 60?
65.
765 episodes in. Like, we have different guests, you know, this is your third time on the show. But I'm the main consistent thing here, you know? And so it is about the guests, but it's also about my journey through this stuff, especially with the topics we're dealing with. We're not talking about a comedy podcast. And you know what I mean? Like, so
heavy stuff.
It's heavy stuff. And I'd have to be literally mentally held back severely if I'm not changing perspectives on things as I discover things through people's experiences. And I found myself over the last, like, 2 years really hitting a thing where I'm like, I don't know if I can keep going status quo on this show. Like, it was, you know, tell me your story, you know, and that's what we do that. But, like, there's a deeper reason here. And God was starting to really show me there's something else going on here. And I got to a point where I was like, I would be extremely disingenuous if I didn't just follow my conviction on this. I would be a fake host of this show, which is what I didn't want to be when I first started. When I first started, I was like, should I be the shticky guy? You know, should I have a shtick? And I even thought about changing my name, which sometimes I wish I would have been like Juan Diaz or something, because, like, I don't like the fact that people know my name and that they can just find me, because I've dealt with that crap. Yeah. But, like, I didn't want to be something that I'm not, because my fear was that that would work. And then I'm trapped in this cell that I've built for myself. And so I found myself circling back to that same thing where it's like, I'm at a crossroads right now. And and though the audience doesn't know what I know, because I had that story that I was talking about earlier, 692 episode, Dark Shift, like, I had that 3 years ago. I knew that story. And then I'm having all these other revelations. The audience didn't have that story yet. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, this is deep, and this is strong spiritual warfare. And the more I started learning, and the more people are coming to me saying, hey, I'm being recruited, this, that, and the other, I'm like, I can't pretend I don't know the things that I know.
That's right.
And I was like, God, Jesus, take the wheel. And I was just like, let's do this. And it's just been this shift in the show as me as a host, because I was just like, I got to just stay authentic. And 8 years ago, I was authentic. And as I learned things, I was authentic. when I learned some big things, I had to make big decisions to still be authentic. And I started realizing that I was toying with that line when I started feeling like in my everyday life, I'm not the same guy that I am on the microphone, because there's this shift happening. And in my everyday life, I'm very evangelistic and just like, that's how I am. And then I started feeling like, I feel like when I turn on the microphone, there's a tampering down of that. And I don't know if that's good. And especially with the things that I've learned, I don't think that's good. I think people need to know this stuff, whether they like it or not. And the more I wrestled with that, the more I was just like, I'm done with this crap. I'm just going to be who I am. And this means that like the evangelistic side of me of 8 years ago is magnified even more now. Like, cause now it's like before it was like, hey, Jesus loves you. And I'll tell the world about that. And now it's like, Jesus loves you. Hey, and also there's a war that you were born into. And there's an enemy out there that's trying to destroy your soul every day. Their sole purpose is to destroy you. Come to Jesus. You know, it's just like, but like that's there was a shift in me. Anyways,
became a recruiter.
He's
got his own finders club. The Father has his own.
Oh,
you know, we talk about the enemies, but he's got his own.
He hunts Christ Finder Club.
He hunts the souls of men too. You know,
oh man,
just does it in a different way.
Yeah,
it's an invitation.
Yeah,
you know.
But anyways, I wanted to go down that road a bit, because what you just said, it was an open door for me to actually go into some detail about that. It's not the most organic way to do things at times, but you brought that up, it allowed me to do that. So thank you for that.
It's beautiful. But I think you mentioned something that was actually the prerequisite that was required, which was your repenting for the sin that you had being embittered towards the body, the church.
Oh yeah.
And I distinctly had deep wounds about that. You know, if you read my book, there's some bitter pain that comes out about the church, because I was raised in the Christian church all during every freaking day of this. My family were go to church is the religion people, you know, and even with bringing grandpa into the church, pedophile next to me, pastor's blind, can't see him, can't discern it, ravaging my life. Pastors coming into my room and taking what was most precious to me because they thought that thing was demonic. A poster I had of a T-Rex popping out of a wall. That was my nightlight. It glowed in the dark. It was just like sacred object of mine. One of the few things that gave me some kind of thing to hold on to when I was being abused at night. And the pastor from a very charismatic church was brought in to try to do a deliverance because I was having night terrors, screaming my head off at night. They moved my great grandpa into our house so I could be his bedmate. Sold me to him. And I was losing my mind, freaking losing my mind. Because now, before it was out of the house stuff, and now it was in the house stuff. And it was like there was a sanctity to my bed. You know, that's a big freaking deal to me. Mm-hmm. Always has been. I don't care what kind of bed I'd sleep in dog loos with dogs. That was my bed. Hammocks. I slept in a hammock my entire senior year. Like, I don't care what it is. I want a space that's mine. Something. I'll crawl into a freaking ditch. I just need somewhere to lay my head and rest for a minute. And they violated that. Mm-hmm. And I was coming unglued. And they brought in this pastor and he walked into my room and like all the blood drained out of his face. He was terrified at the felt presence of the demonic that was in that room.
Okay.
I could tell the guy was about to get his lunch eaten. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I genuinely believe he loved the Father and he loved Jesus and he was doing his best. But behind him were two men that were such powerful and capable Luciferians. Mm. And they were bringing him in for a spectacle.
Wow.
Like, that's my understanding of the church. And as he walked around in there, he was horrified at my bed, but he just looked around and they kind of pointed out the poster. They're like, maybe it's that. And he's like, yeah, it's that.
Definitely
that. And it's like not the guy's bedroom that's on the other side of it, that freaking Grandpa Don. That they took that poster and crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. And I had to drive by that thing the next morning, and he freaking raped me that night. That's mind control. That's mind control. That's the kind of filth they do to set you up so that you think the pastors at the church are weak. That's what it did to me. I realized that whole event, that setup they did there, wasn't really about any of that. It was to make me look at pastors and the church as a place full of cowards. Don't go there. You want to find warriors? Come to us. We'll teach you how to hunt. I never had a pastor teach me how to hunt the souls of men. What the heck?
Yeah.
Like, should be day one. Welcome to the team, son.
Yeah.
You're going to war. Yes. I want that guy.
Yeah.
I want that guy. I want somebody that's going to knife hand somebody in the throat and teach them the gospel. I need that. I frankly need that. I just need to see it on stage at least once. Just straight to the throat. Drop that guy. Holy Spirit fire on him. That's the Benny Hinn I wish he was. You know what I mean? Like, where the heck is that Holy Rollers team? They were the power team guys. I need that. Yeah. I need that because I'm on fire inside. Yeah. I burn day and night and I need something to burn down. Yeah. Like, I'm like that. My wife always laughs when I say burn it down. She always laughs, right? I'm like, honey, I don't think you get it. I'm looking for nuclear weapons. She's like, oh, got that look in your ass. I'm like, I want them. I want to watch it burn. I don't even know if they're real. You know what I'm saying? There's that whole thing. Just saying. Anyway.
Birds are fake too.
Birds are fake. They're drones. Dinosaurs aren't real. I've gone down all the rabbit holes, son.
Oh my gosh.
But I had such a bitterness in my heart about the church because I yoked them to cowards, yoked them to easily manipulated. I yoked them to betrayers of trust. I told pastors I was being abused and they told the abusers. Spit on them.
Yeah.
I had a lot more flowery language for them.
Yeah.
I wanted to murder them for that betrayal. I suffered so much at the hands of the church. But I also heard the gospel there. And that was my family. And I also was given much there. I had people feed me. I had people clothe me and shelter me and harbor me. All along the way, he sent his beautiful body to sustain me and nourish me along when I was dying of despair. He'd send me a harbinger of hope. He was so gracious to me because his body is real. They're real people that genuinely have the Spirit of God in them. They are not like these monsters. They have love. They have love even for their enemies. They're unlike any other thing I've ever encountered on the earth. And over the course of my life, I have literally got to see by changing covenants, by going into covenant with Yahuwah and repenting of my bitterness for the church and asking him to cleanse that area of my mind and have a love and a respect for them again. It's like these scales of pride that were on me, because ultimately that's pride, fell off, and I'm able to see the church, the body of Messiah, with this beautiful lens of what effective work they're doing. Like there's people that took my wife and I in. Listen, I gave up unimaginable amounts of an inheritance to try to do this path this way so Naomi could have freedom and my children could know what it's like to not wake up in that crap like I did. But and that kind of leaves a mark on you, and you kind of have an expectation. Like, I believe by my 30th birthday, man, I was supposed to have the keys to the kingdom and go freaking drive, and I was going to burn everybody down that was on my kill list and bless everybody that was on my blessed list. That was like what I'd been built up to do. And instead, I was in a Walmart parking lot on my 30th birthday in an RV living on the run. Like, oh, that's quite a letdown.
Yeah.
I survived for this, anonymity, obscurity, and waste. But the people that opened their doors to us and took us in and sheltered us were the lowliest among men. Some of them had great means, many of them did not. And they sacrificed what little they had to give us life. One of those people, Adam Wegman, Adam, the first man on YouTube, check him out. He's the one who put these widow's mites in this knife for me. He's a great jeweler. But he traveled in a school bus with us, my family. He converted a school bus and went on the road. And we lived alongside them for 6 months. And do you know what that did? We had companionship. We had what you just described when you gather together with other people and the Spirit is there. Like, you're like, wow, I have accountability in my life. So I'm not just a lone wolf doof just running amok out here. Like, I actually have a brother in arms. And when you pray together, it's this force multiplier. And you're like, we should do that more often. And you're like, I should do that more often. Like, they labored in the trenches of black tanks and poop everywhere and no electricity and laundry and all the crap that happens with On the Road that looks real great on the Instagram, but stinks like death inside there, man. Like they sacrificed everything to try to follow the calling of their king. They gave up everything. And I'm just so addicted to loving these people now because I've seen meekness is power under control. And then when it's in your power to push the button to burn the earth to ash, you instead send out your army to minister love. That's freaky stuff. That's nothing like what the way of it is, of the kingdom of darkness is. But that's exactly when they ask their Elijah. They're like, hey, Elijah, we got the whole army's blind. He just, boom. He just hit him with blindness. 180,000 people. He's all like, boom, you're all done, son. They all like came there, to kill him. And he's like, I know, you came here for that, but you're going to leave blind. You're going to leave blind. They're all wandering around, and he leads them back to the city where all the rest of the army of Israel is. And the commander of the army is like, oh yeah, baby, sweet slaughter time, right? And he's like, no, here's what you're going to do. You're going to feed them. You're going to clothe them. You're going to bless them. And then you're going to send them home. That's mercy. Straight up biblical level mercy. And you know what they did is they didn't create another generation of iniquity. They drained the battery bank, the kingdom of darkness, and they filled those men with love, because the greatest love that exists is to love one's enemies and to have mercy on them, to spare their lives. I have stared at some of these men with my blade at their backs, ready to hunt them and kill them. And I have been given a perspective on them that did not come from me and given them mercy. I see and understand that I was not born to take life. I was born to give it. Nathan means giver, the gift. I was born to bring the words of the covenant to life. That's what I was here for. You have been given a calling to bring these words to life, to bring these stories and these testimonies, these confessionals that others, we sit in silence and obscurity. We have no voice. We are here to be voices for the voiceless. I'm a pale drop in a big bucket of blood where people are wailing and weeping every night, desperate for somebody to hear them, someone to save them. They are desperate for their voices to be heard, and their whole life they've been told to shut up and go away. But you know what? We're going to cry all the louder, Jesus, Son of David, have compassion on me. They told him to shut up. We will not be silent. And you know what? If you try to silence us, these stones will cry out. Glory be to Yahweh forever and ever. He's coming, and he will come with wrath this next time, and you must turn to be saved.
Nathan, that's why. I don't even know how to respond to that. You just perfectly depicted that warrior, the warrior's heart that has been birthed in you. And that's what I was talking about earlier. I mean, it's like the idea that God built us and created us for an image that he has designed, and the enemy takes it and perverts it. I mean, it's really played out so beautifully with you. I mean, literally, you are a warrior. You've been designed to be a warrior, and they hijacked your design for their purposes. And the redemption story now is that the rest of your life is wartime, fulfilling what you've been created to do, but through the means that he has designed for that to be. And you were talking about earlier the draw to go and use the blade, but you're doing it the Lord's way. Like, and if you would have gone and done it the old way, like, I forget how you described it, but like, it literally is like, it's stepping down a level, like it's not even as effective as the way the Lord has called you to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like choosing to show up to a gunfight with a knife, or in your case, that might be actually
that.
Never mind. That was a really bad example. Showing up to a nuke fight with a BB gun,
Trying to go after a sniper with a knife. That's a thing. It's scary.
Enjoyable. But I think that what you are depicting through your sharing is that from day one, you were born a warrior. It's just in that sandbox, it was hijacked. You know what I mean? And it's cliche and sometimes even annoying to hear Christians say this, but God does turn all things for His good, right? So
the saving of many lives.
It's you think you're just so far beyond correction, and it's just not true. It's just not the truth.
Absolutely.
So
there are so many wounded ones who are like that. There's so many people with split personality, mind controlled, broken personalities, dissociated, fractured, wounded ones. There's hundreds of millions of them now. And they are some of the most beautiful, incredibly intelligent, capable people that have ever been. But the enemy saw them like Terminator and the generals in his enemy's army. And he went and shattered their youths. You know, Gray, there's a guy who he's organizedsafety.org.
Yeah.
He says, this is what is on my water bottle. Go for the head, break the cycle. He's got a serpent, the dragon, with his dagger. Beautiful dagger. He's a dagger worker like I was.
Is he? I've talked to him here and there. And
his network of what he's doing to try to dismantle this empire is so brilliantly done, because it's a way of reporting these things that have happened to survivors or victims, where you can report it anonymously, organized safety. And you can report it anonymously and tag its location, and then it will be independently corroborated if somebody else also shares that the same individual, same places and locations. It builds a terrain map and allows them to be able to take legal action against people, because we have multiple corroborating witnesses of people that didn't have any way of knowing that information.
No connection.
Yes, it's one of the best ways of trying to bring it out, because I can't sit here and go through naming, like a hypothetical person, like a Richard Allen White as the military handler for my family. But if I wanted to try to name some kind of hypothetical person, I would potentially have to suffer the legal consequences of doing that. But if you want to report it, you can use something like that, and it allows people to be able to go after it. And there's such brilliance that's contained inside the minds of survivors for ways of fighting, the true warriors, like incredible warriors, because people that have been through this level of depravity, people that have seen Baal Hadad face to face, people that have cut the throats of their enemies because they're so zealous for their convictions, are the greatest sellouts for the kingdom of darkness. But when they're redeemed, oh my gosh, they become Paul. They become Moses. They become men of mightiness and renown that tear asunder the kingdom of darkness, that take hammers and smash the idols of their fathers. Like Gideon rose up in the night. He took 10 of his servants and he broke down the idols of his father's house. They were the whole city used to do sacrifices and ritual magic in his front yard. That's what his dad was into. Disgusting stuff. But he broke it down and burned it. And you know what? That took such bravery. That's the kind of thing that is available to those that will call upon our Creator and ask Him to deliver you and heal you, no matter what level of fracturing you've been, from the highest of heights of the upper echelon of elites to the bottom rung of our society. Every man, woman, and child was made and born for a purpose, to tear down the kingdom of darkness. For this reason, the Son of God was manifested to destroy the works of the devil. That's what we were born to do. That's the invitation that's waiting on the table. Sign on that dotted line. You don't have to sign in your blood. Someone already did. He owns you. It's whether or not you accept His gift of life and salvation. He will raise us from the dead. When we die and we wane and we wax old, we will live again, and we will live without a memory of the nightmare. We will live and rejoice forever, because our King is here and our Father will rule and reign forever.
We're wrapping it there. That's the show.
Drop the meta material.
Like,
walk out.
We don't need to listen to any other sounds and stuff. That's a wrap for this session. And I call it a session because we will do other sessions with Nathan at some point down the road. I mean, how long have we been recording, Jack? 3 hours. That's good enough, I'd say.
Sweet introduction.
Yeah. Welcome to Nathan Reynolds, everybody. No, how can we not end on that, right? That note. Why take it a different direction at this point? Let people know where they can find more about you.
You bet. You can go to snatchedfromtheflames.com. That's the book. That's the dragon, by the way. Like, my wife drew that.
Oh, really?
Because I tried to help her. That's what I saw. That's there. He lacks his armor because I've taken his armor, son. I didn't. The King of Kings did. I read the book. Ends bad for him. Anyways, snatchfromtheflames.com. I've got a audiobook there, PDF. Name your own price. Don't let price be an issue, guys. I've got an entire dramatized recording of the audio scriptures, way more important than my book. You can download that for free there. And I also have prayer resources, which were the most critical component in my wrestling with this battle, is prayers from Dr. Michael Lake and Mary Lou, which are in the back of my book. They're also free on the website, that are good for trauma and fragmentation, people morning prayers, evening prayers, generational curses from Luciferian cults, and all of you got them in your junk. Every one of you got junk in your trunk. You got some spiders crawling around in the back corners of great grandpa Ned, that freak.
Yeah.
Don't carry around his baggage no more. Unplug. And also prayers for breaking of unions from sexual soul ties, because every time you ever got into it, you got some spiritually transmitted diseases that come with it, and it doesn't go away just because you stopped. So shut that door, seal it up. It goes two ways. That's a two-way street.
Spiritually transmitted diseases.
Yeah, STDs, bro. There's a big problem. People should talk about that. That's the real sex education they should have given you as a child instead of the crap that they gave you. Anyways, I'm going to get lost.
I was going to say, here we go.
Hold on. But the main place that I do a lot of my posting on is at YouTube. Nathan Reynolds, that's my channel. The Linden Railroad. We talk about all kinds of topics like this. We also are really passionate. Permaculture. We talk about dragon's teeth. This one's for you, Tony.
Oh, for real?
You for real.
Oh.
This one's for you, Jack. You get a dragon's tooth. You betcha.
That's awesome.
That's for you, brother.
Thank you.
Real life. We'll have to talk about dragon venom and lizards and how they use it to poison people today. It's literally a consequence that he said for doing these sins. You're gonna drink the poisons of dragons. That's why people are literally drinking the poisons of dragons. We got to deal with all that stuff. But YouTube, TikTok, I think, is Snatched from the Flames. Rumble, Snatched from the Flames. Stuff like that. You can find me places. I'm not easily found on physicality.
Google them.
Google, yikes.
You'll find him.
There's some stuff.
Maybe DuckDuckGo him.
Anyways, live dangerously, bro. Bear up those bronze blades.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you.